Chapter 395. Who is it? Hearing the sound of the door, Aphrodite, who was intoxicated with her hands at this time, instantly woke up. She took the quilt and covered herself with it. At the same time, she shouted sharply, and then grabbed the phone next to her. If the situation was not right, she would immediately call Jianghu. After all, there were both men and women in this manner, and their previous reputation was not very good. Maybe some unlucky bastard will take the risk. It can be said that one must always be on guard against people. But this time, she may be a little too sensitive. Jianghu has a good job here, and the income is particularly good, the food is good, the accommodation is good, and the boss is very polite. Where can he find such a job? So none of the men here will come over to show off. After hearing Aphrodite's words, the person outside the door had already pushed the door open and walked in. It's me, it's me, it's me. Pointing to herself, the person said to Aphrodite. Aphrodite took a closer look and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. She was wondering who it was. It turned out to be Dinah Taylor, who lived with her. The two used to be good friends, so they were not estranged. It was normal for them to take a bath together and discuss things together. Her naked body couldn't help but move into the bed, making it easier for her to sit on the edge of the bed. Dinah Taylor did not hesitate and walked straight over and sat on the edge of the bed. It's so late, why are you not sleeping? What are you doing here? Looking at Dinah Taylor, who sat down, Aphrodite asked in confusion. If I didn't come, would I be able to see such a beautiful scene? If you need anything, just tell me. It's not like we haven't played together before. I'll help you. Looking at Aphrodite, Dinah Taylor said with a smile. Indeed, there is no joke that they can't make when they are together. Naturally, they can also make jokes in this regard. No, now that Jianghu is here, no one can touch him, including you. But as soon as she finished speaking, Aphrodite shook her head and said with a firm face. Looking at her firm look, Dinah Taylor couldn't help but be stunned. It can't be, you and Jianghu have already done that thing. Looking at Aphrodite's firm gaze, Dinah Taylor's eyes were a little unnatural. The more she looked, the more she felt that Aphrodite's situation was wrong. Well, we have already done it. Aphrodite didn't intend to hide it from her friend and said frankly. Damn it, such an opportunity, why didn't you call me? Even if you don't call others, you should call me. Looking at Aphrodite, Dinah Taylor couldn't help but pounce on the mattress, and then asked anxiously. But after they left, I didn't go to Jianghu's place because I didn't know what to do. Then, they left. And I. Biting her lips gently, Aphrodite said shyly. And hearing her words, Dinah Taylor couldn't help but be taken aback. Those two women. We can't possibly wait for those two women to make progress. Sigh, if we really want to go now, we can just force ourselves on him. Jianghu will have no choice but to obey. Waving her fist, it was obvious that Dinah Taylor's attitude toward Jianghu was much tougher than Aphrodite's. Although they were both prepared to give themselves to him, one was passive, while the other was proactive. Don't, Jianghu is very timid. You'll scare him again. But as soon as she heard her words, Aphrodite immediately dispelled such thoughts and said with a serious face. Looking at Aphrodite's appearance, Dinah Taylor also shrugged. Obviously, she also knew that Jianghu was a very timid person. He was so timid that he didn't dare to touch them even if they delivered themselves to his door without any status. Okay, I'm going to sleep. If you're talking about this, I'll definitely remember to call you if there's a next time. It's late, go back to sleep. Looking at Dinah Taylor's somewhat unwilling look, Aphrodite patted her shoulder and said to her. Oh, that's not right. I came here because I have something to ask you. I heard from Daliana that two more women came to Jianghu. One of them is the woman who did scientific research when she was treating us, and the other one is her patient. Don't tell me that they also have that kind of relationship with Jianghu. If we ask them, will it be effective? Hearing Aphrodite's words, Dinah Taylor, who was about to leave subconsciously, suddenly remembered that she came here for something. She immediately turned her head and said to Aphrodite. They don't seem to be. Aphrodite shook her head. She also got the news, but to be honest, she was a little worried at first, but then she followed what Daliana and Marion said. The three of them were just ordinary friends. The lines they put in front of Jianghu and the two women's door were still the same the next day. This meant that the door had never been opened from the inside or the outside. This proved that the three of them shouldn't be in that kind of relationship. Hearing Aphrodite's words, Dinah Taylor was relieved. She walked out of Aphrodite's room again, but after returning to her room, Dinah Taylor recalled Aphrodite's appearance just now. She wasn't interested in Aphrodite, but since Jianghu wanted one, shouldn't the rest be put on the agenda? At this time, Jianghu didn't know what the agenda was in Dinah Taylor's eyes. He was still sleeping soundly. Early the next morning, when he went out for a run, he deliberately went to the dock. The fishermen and cowboys woke up very early every day. Jianghu's temper was good, but it didn't mean that they could deal with their work. If they were really lazy, let alone Jianghu, Ai Dehua and Robbins wouldn't let them go. So early in the morning, everyone, including Marlon Rupert, gathered at the dock first. Here, they had to prepare the water area where they were going to sprinkle fish food today. They also had to prepare to catch a few fish to see if these fish were growing well and if they were sick. This was what they had to do every day. After Marlon Rupert helped them with this, he had to go to the airport with Belle Lester and fly the helicopter around in the air. In the afternoon, they would fly another round. If the fish were sick or there was a shortage of fish food, then they would use the helicopter to sprinkle bait. They were all experts in these matters. One of Jianghu's best qualities was that when he didn't understand something, he wouldn't try to figure it out. Since the ranch was handed over to Robbins, Robbins had the final say. He would arrange who to do what. Jianghu was only in charge of the accounts. As for the fish farm, Edward Anderson was in charge of it. What to do and what to prepare was all up to him. Of course, if they needed to spend money, they would need to find Jianghu. Hey, boss, what's the matter? Seeing Jianghu running over from afar, Edward Anderson stopped what he was doing and asked Jianghu. Usually, Jianghu would just stop by the dock and turn back. Today, he deliberately ran over, so there must be something. Seeing Ai Dehua stand up, Jianghu slowly stopped. I have something to ask you. Is there a dolphin colony near us? Looking at Ai Dehua in front of him, Jianghu also greeted the busy seamen behind him, and then asked them. Dolphin? Is there a fixed settlement for this thing? Hearing Jianghu's words, Tommy Charles asked curiously. He has been a seaman for some years, but does dolphins have a fixed area of activity? He really doesn't know. There weren't any before, they were like sharks, but when they gave birth, they would go to a fixed area, but later, there were certain conservation areas where they would not be attacked and there was a lot of food, so there were some fixed areas of dolphins. Hearing his words, Andrew Christian on the other side answered with a smile. He came from South America, the most important area of dolphin activity, where dolphins are not only a major creature but also a means to attract tourists. It is precisely because of this that these conservation areas have been vigorously developed by the government. Yes, it's such a conservation area. I want to ask, do we have one here? Hearing his words, Jianghu clicked his wrist hard. He was looking for such a place, at least he had to have a general direction. We don't seem to have one here. There are a lot of dolphins near the Pacific Ocean and Australia, but the east coast of the United States and Florida are okay, but here we are in an important fishery resource area, which doesn't give dolphins much room to move, so there are not many dolphins here. Hearing Jianghu's question, Andrew Christian said with a little hesitation. Indeed, the northern Pacific Ocean has been the location of the fisheries of Europe, the United States, and Canada since ancient times. Among the world's four major fisheries, the Newfoundland fishery and the North Sea fishery are both in the northern Atlantic Ocean. It is precisely because the fishery here is particularly developed and there are fishing nets and the like everywhere that these dolphins have little room to grow. Therefore, most of the dolphins either went to tropical areas near the equator or swam into the wider Pacific Ocean. Therefore, Jianghu and the others are indeed a little embarrassed here. If they want to find dolphins, they have to go south, otherwise, they have to go north to find whales. Killer whales are also part of the dolphin family, but killer whales are not so easy to tame. The most important thing is that Jianghu can't afford to raise them. What should we do then? Hearing Christian's words, Jianghu can't help but feel a little hesitant. This matter is indeed more troublesome. Boss, maybe one person has a way. Just as Jianghu was worried, Edward Anderson smiled and said to Jianghu. Hearing his words, Jianghu couldn't help but be stunned. Christian clearly said that there is no way. Does Ai Dehua still have a way? It seems that this old fisherman really has a few tricks up his sleeve. Boss, I don't know if you still remember the place where we went to sell the blue marlin after we caught it? Hearing Jianghu's words, Ai Dehua smiled and said to Jianghu. Jianghu listened to his words and was even more confused. Chapter 396. Today, I really vomited blood. I went downstairs at 4:00 to prepare to take a shower. An hour later, I came back just in time to publish the novel. I forgot that today was the last day of the long holiday. There were so many people, but it was crowded, so I endured it. I took off my clothes, took a shower, and waited in line to take a shower. I waited in line for 2 hours, and when it was my turn to take a shower, there was no cold water. If there was no hot water and only cold water, I could endure it. In the end, there was only hot water and no cold water. I was scalded and couldn't take a shower. I waited until the cold water came. In the end, I waited until 8:00. Now, I haven't even eaten. It's so bitter. I'll send it to everyone first. These are free. Below is the text. Hua hua. The sound of waves surging. A metallic yacht rode the wind, broke through the waves, and cut through the ripples on the water, rushing toward Boston. At this time, there were 3 people on the boat, Jianghu, Edward Anderson, and Andrew Christian. Sitting in the middle of the boat, Jianghu looked at Boston, which he originally couldn't see clearly, but gradually entered his eyes. His heart also became lighter. Yes, at this time, these 3 people came out not for others, but to get some dolphins. The person who Ai Dehua said had a way was none other than the old man who collected the blue marlin when Jianghu sold it for the first time. When Edward Anderson mentioned it, Jianghu also remembered at once. It seemed that the old man who collected the fish said that his fish were alive. He wanted to sell them alive to the restaurant or to the owner. Jianghu couldn't remember. But what could be proven was that this old man should have a way. If there was a way to sell, there would naturally be a way to buy. Since it was difficult for Jianghu to catch wild dolphins, it didn't matter if he bought them. Dolphins were not very rare fish in this ocean. They were far worse than blue marlin, and even worse than sharks because dolphins were protected by international conventions. Except for some extreme races and people, no one would go out of their way to catch dolphins, even if they accidentally caught one. Most fishermen would also release them. Even if there were some who were dirty and unwilling to release them, they would be sold to zoos and aquariums. This was because dolphins' reproductive ability was not bad. In addition, they had almost no natural enemies other than humans. In the ocean, their only natural enemy was sharks. Humans would eat shark fins, but they had never heard of anyone eating dolphin fins. Therefore, dolphins weren't expensive. According to Edward Anderson, if Jianghu wanted to buy them, the price would be around $20,000 to $30,000 each. Of course, if Jianghu wanted a large quantity, the price would naturally fall. Because it was only a purchase, Jianghu and the others did not drive a fishing boat. Instead, they drove Jianghu's yacht. Boats were like cars. They were not afraid of driving them, but they were afraid of letting them go. Once they were let go, they would easily break down. It was fine to drive them occasionally. So Jianghu, Edward Anderson, and Andrew Christian, who knew a little about dolphins, went to the fish market in Boston to inquire about it. As soon as they approached the fish market, the fishermen who were lining up to sell fish in the fish market couldn't help but whisper. It had to be said that Jianghu didn't come here many times, but he received a lot of attention. Unlike the first time he came to sell the blue marlin, Jianghu was still a little reserved. Now, Jianghu was still very open. He would even greet familiar people, making them stunned. Of course, the most confused person was the guy who sold Jianghu's sea map. He thought that Jianghu came to settle accounts with him. He didn't think about it. He sold Jianghu's sea map for a few months. No matter how angry Jianghu was, he wouldn't come to settle accounts with him now. What's more, Jianghu was really grateful to him. It was because of his relationship that Jianghu had a windfall and a talisman. "Hey, lucky billionaire, what are you doing here?" Seeing the boat approaching, a steward outside the fish market asked curiously. He was sure that Jianghu didn't come to sell fish. Although his yacht is good, it can't catch fish. But this thing can't catch fish, so he was very curious. Why did Jianghu come here? Is he recruiting or something like that? "We're looking for your boss. We have a business to discuss with him." Hearing the steward's words, Jianghu also responded loudly. As for the billionaire in his mouth, Jianghu selectively filtered it. Anyway, he wasn't afraid of being heard by others. Hearing Jianghu's words, although the steward was a little curious about what business Jianghu came to discuss, he still sent the message. In the United States, no one would neglect a billionaire, so the words passed through his walkie-talkie were almost instantly reversed. He asked Jianghu to go inside and then made a gesture, indicating that Jianghu didn't need to line up and directly cut in. Ai Dehua didn't hesitate. He turned the steering wheel and shuttled back and forth between these boats. He had to admit that Jianghu had been driving for a while, but he still couldn't do this skillful technique for the time being. Because they knew that Jianghu didn't come to sell fish, everyone expressed that they didn't care about him cutting in line. Soon, the boat stopped in the dock, and Jianghu and the other two jumped off the boat. "Hey, my dear brother, I heard that you have something to talk to me about." "What's wrong? Are you going to sell the fish in your fishery?" As soon as Jianghu and the others landed, the old man who first bought Jianghu's blue marlin came over with a smile. Hearing his words, the fishermen around him couldn't help but laugh. Everyone knew that Jianghu had put in the fish seedlings less than 4 months ago. If he wanted to sell them in such a short time, then naturally, he would be selling the fish seedlings. "Of course not, I'm still hoping to take advantage of those guys to make a big profit." Hearing his words, Jianghu also smiled and said. To be honest, if he had just arrived, he wouldn't have been able to stand such American humor. He may think that these people are looking down on him, insulting him, and even some extreme people may think that it's racial discrimination. But in fact, this was how Americans joked. The so-called American humor and Oriental humor were always different. "Then you have to work hard, let's go in." Hearing that Jianghu was not angry and even joked back, the old man was obviously more kind to Jianghu. He smiled and led Jianghu into a room behind him. This room is divided into 2 parts. The front part is where money is placed. Most fishermen come to sell fish. They don't want bank transfers or checks, because no matter how much money you transfer or how many checks you use, as long as it's related to the bank, it will be taxed. It's not easy for Americans to evade taxes, especially these fishermen. They don't make much money from fishing. So these people basically want cash. A boat of fish is worth a few $1,000s, or even only a few $100s. Of course, private fishing houses that gave out cash were much more popular, because they could avoid paying taxes on this part of the money. So here, a lot of cash is stored every day. Of course, the protection of this fishing line is not ordinary. In addition to the old man, there are more than 20 people here. More than a dozen of them are sailors. They are responsible for weighing fish and managing the fishing boats. There are also more than a dozen armed personnel. They are responsible for distributing money here and guarding against others coming to rob. They all have legal gun licenses. Ordinary people don't dare to show off here. Behind this room is a living room. Whoever is tired can come in and rest. Now it is a good place for Jianghu to talk. After coming to the room, a macho man poured a cup of coffee for Jianghu and the others, and then took the initiative to walk out. He knows that there are some things that he shouldn't listen to. Come on, my Oriental friend, what do you need? You can tell me. The old man watched Jianghu sit down, took a sip of coffee, and then said with a smile. Then I will get straight to the point. I think I need a batch of dolphins. Looking at the old man in front of him, Jianghu said faintly. Dolphins? What do you want to do with this thing? Open a zoo? Hearing Jianghu's words, the old man was a little surprised. Originally, he thought that Jianghu came to him for some other difficult things. He didn't expect that he came to buy dolphins. You don't have to worry about this. I have my uses anyway. With a shrug, Jianghu can't say that he tamed the dolphins to be his underwater guards. When he heard Jianghu's words, the smile on the old man's face became a little more serious. I really can't ignore this, because if I sell you a dolphin, you eat it in the blink of an eye, or kill it to make a video or something. If it is not discovered, it will be fine. If it is discovered, I will be unlucky. When he said the previous sentence, the old man was clearly referring to Jianghu's identity, Wuxia. From this, it can be seen that Wuxia people eat delicious food. It is no secret in this world. Almost everyone knows that Wuxia people eat almost anything. Don't worry, I am here to domesticate and set free, not to kill. Jianghu shook his head. He is not a pervert. Why would he kill dolphins? Therefore, he calmly spoke to him. Oh, if that's the case, then there is no problem. I believe you. Ai Dehua, my old friend works for you. I think I don't need to lie. That thing, there are plenty of them in the sea. White dolphins are more than 2.5 meters tall. White dolphins are more than 2 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 meters tall. Black dolphins are more than 1 meter tall. White dolphins are more than 1 meter tall. White dolphins are more than 1 meter tall. Black dolphins are more than 1 meter tall. White 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 dolphins are more than 1 meter tall. Looking at Jianghu, this old man believed Jianghu so easily. He didn't know if he was just asking a routine question, and then he started to quote. White dolphins? Black dolphins? Aren't they divided into thin, broad, striped, white beaks and so on? But after hearing the old man's quote, Jianghu was a little confused. He looked up a lot of information about dolphins on the internet. Why was it so simple? Sigh, those are all subdivisions. What species? What species? Fishermen are all uncouth. At most, they would graduate from high school and become fishermen. It's impossible for them to recite all the species. In their eyes, dolphins are only black and white. Oh, and there are also flowers. But the flowers are counted as the white ones. After hearing Jianghu's words, the old man waved his hand and winked at Jianghu in the end, as if he was giving Jianghu a discount. Hearing this, Jianghu couldn't help but be speechless. Why was it that all the information he looked up was useless? He had investigated dolphins and marine mammals, but in the end, he could only differentiate between black and white. Well, looking at white during the day was good, and looking at black at night made him sleep soundly. Jianghu could only comfort himself like this. Chapter 397. In the United States, you could raise anything you wanted, from golden eagles and white-headed eagles to crocodiles and brown bears. You could even raise snakes and tigers if you wanted to. As long as your neighbors didn't care, no one would care about you. Of course, if your neighbors call the police, these animals will also be caught, so if you don't have a big house like Tyson's or O'Neill's, it's better not to think about raising tigers. The cost of raising tigers is not cheap. But dolphins, to be honest, there are not many people raising dolphins. First, dolphins need a large place to swim. Second, if it's not near the sea, it's too expensive to get water by yourself. Also, dolphins are social creatures. If they don't stay in groups, they will die. The above 3 points have caused the dolphin breeding population to be in a low state. According to statistics, more than 50% of dolphins will not eat after being caught until they die of depression. This is also the reason why humans are not willing to hunt them. However, in the market economy, as long as it's something, it will have its value. The same is true for dolphins. So there are still some people who will catch these animals for money, but the chances of successfully catching them are not very high. If you want to send them back alive, the chances are even lower. It's precisely because of this that it costs tens of thousands of dollars per dolphin. The price I gave is already a very considerate price. I believe that it should be difficult for you to get such a price elsewhere. Of course, if you want more, we can still give you a discount. Seeing that Jianghu was seriously thinking about it, the old man on the other side also smiled and said a sentence. Then he didn't speak anymore. Bargaining was not very popular in the United States. Once the price was quoted and it was not successful, most of the transactions would fall through. It was not like the popular domestic practice of asking for sky-high prices and asking for money on the spot. The price this old man said is the same as what Ai Dehua said to Jianghu when he came. So Jianghu glanced at Ai Dehua at this time. Ai Dehua did not look at him, nor did he nod, he just stood there without moving. This means that the price is okay, not very high, but not low either. Looking at the old man in front of him, Jianghu thought for a while and stated what he wanted. I want 10 of each kind, a total of 20 dolphins, all of which must be above 1.5 meters. What's the lowest number you can give me? Oh my God, now I'm sure you're not going to eat them. 20 of them. Looks like you're really going to set them free to do good deeds. But it doesn't matter. I'm only going to earn my franklins. 20 of them, all over 1.5 meters tall. I'll give you a total of $13,000. 500 less, $12,500. 20 of them will be a total of $250,000. Upon hearing Jianghu's words, the old man couldn't help but chuckle. After hearing his offer, Jianghu nodded inwardly. $250,000 was still within Luke's acceptable range. He also had his reasons for asking for a 1.5 meter tall model. Dolphins can basically grow between 1.7 and 2.4 meters, and a few can grow to more than 2.5 meters. This is the reason why dolphins are the most expensive. After all, there are not many of them, and 1.5 meters is also a critical point. Dolphins of this age haven't fully matured yet, that is, they are only 2 years old. They can't mate yet, but they already have a certain amount of fighting power. However, their minds haven't fully matured yet, which is more suitable for Jianghu's taming. It is precisely because of this that Jianghu deliberately chose dolphins of this length. The old man naturally understood why Jianghu chose this length, but he chose to shut up at this time. He also knew that he couldn't say too much. He didn't know what Jianghu wanted these dolphins for, and he was too lazy to know. As he said, he only loves his franklins. Jianghu's deal costs $250,000. He can earn about $50,000 from it, and this is just the price. There is no reason not to make a profit, right? Money is not a problem. When can the dolphins arrive? After calculating in his heart, $250,000 is nothing for Jianghu now, so he stood up first and asked the old man. I'll call you within a week, but you have to leave me some deposit first. The old man saw Jianghu stand up, so he also stood up and said to Jianghu with a smile. Dolphins of more than 1.5 meters are really not difficult to get. In addition to the harvest of the fishermen nearby, some of the zoos and aquariums in the city also need dolphins to give birth. Some aquariums can't support the dolphins anymore. Most of the zoos, museums, and aquariums in the United States are open for free. Their only income is donations from kind-hearted people. However, This money is naturally not enough to make ends meet, so sometimes it is not rare to sell the extra dolphins to some rich people or people like the old man in the United States. Here's $50,000. I'll wait for your call within a week. Jianghu is also a straightforward person. He doesn't want to waste his breath here. He directly took out a check for $50,000 and handed it to the old man. The old man picked up the check and flicked it gently. Listen to my good news. As long as he has money, there is nothing this old man can't get in the sea. After making an agreement with him and signing something like an agreement, Jianghu left with Ai Dehua and the others. Under the envious gazes of the fishermen, the beautiful yacht slowly sailed out of the bay. Once he sped up, he quickly disappeared like a white line. Looking at Jianghu's yacht, many people there sighed helplessly. To be honest, who doesn't envy Jianghu's life? A big yacht, big money, and a lot of beautiful women by his side. However, this kind of life is probably something they can only dream about for the rest of their lives. Listening to the sound of the engine gradually fade away, the originally high spirits of the fishermen fell a lot. It was as if there were two losers sitting in the lobby of a five-star hotel, eating peanuts and bragging. In the end, a billionaire walked in from outside. The feeling of bragging will disappear in an instant. Thinking back, Jianghu was also such a person. At that time, he secretly made up his mind. What? Become such a person? No, no, no. Jianghu made up his mind to never come to this hotel again. Boss, why did that guy come to you? Big deal? Seeing Jianghu leave, a manager here came over and asked the old man who came out to see Jianghu off. He was really curious. 20 dolphins, don't you think it's a big deal? The old man glanced at his subordinates with a smile. Buying 20 dolphins is not a trivial matter. This matter will inevitably spread, so it's not a big deal for them to know about it now. 20 dolphins, what does this guy want to do? Although they all knew that the price of dolphins was not high, it was definitely not low either. It would cost at least 200,000. What was the use of 200,000 to buy 20 dolphins that could not be killed indiscriminately and could not be eaten? We don't need to guess the thoughts of the rich, we just need to do our own thing. Flicking the check in his hand, the old man said with a smile, then turned around to make a phone call. Jianghu's 1-week time limit is quite tight. On the other side, Jianghu drove the yacht at this time and quickly returned to the dock of his home. However, after returning to the dock, he did not go directly back to the villa, but drove the boat to the sea. He called out to Shah and his wife and looked at them. There was no change, but the scars left by yesterday's battle have all disappeared. This time, seeing Jianghu again, not only was Shah very excited, but Shah's wife was also very excited. Don't worry, I'll find some men for you in a few days. Next time, even if a group of killer whales comes, we can still beat them. Looking at the two guys in front of him, Jianghu stretched out his hand, patted left and right, and said to himself at the same time. After playing with the two guys for a while, Jianghu dived into the bottom of the sea. He did not forget the purpose of his visit this time. He came here to dig for abalones. He wants to go back and eat abalones and shark fin. If these two things are perfectly blended together, TSK, I can't think about it anymore. Jianghu felt that if he thought about it for a while, he might start drooling. Diving underwater, every time Jianghu saw the underwater scene, he would feel a little shocked. Although Jianghu was not in the tropical waters, and although the coral reefs were alive, most of them were gray and looked lifeless. However, under the surface of the sea, there were waves and schools of fish flashing by from time to time. It was indeed very beautiful. Just as Jianghu was about to dig for abalones, suddenly, in front of him, there was a school of fast-swimming fish, passing by quickly. This school of fish was eating as they ran, and they ate a lot of small squid and octopus in an instant. Fortunately, Jianghu's fish were not small at this time, and they had a certain amount of self-protection. Otherwise, they might not be able to escape from the poisonous mouths of these guys. Looking at these guys, Jianghu couldn't help but be stunned. He had just finished killing the hammerhead sharks. Why did a bunch of foodies appear? One must know that Jianghu had great expectations for the fish in his fishing ground. How could he allow other fish to eat them? However, when Jianghu fixed his eyes and saw the fish in front of him, Jianghu couldn't help but be stunned. Because he is very familiar with this kind of fish in front of him, but he has never seen it before. The streamlined body like a torpedo, the dark blue dorsal fin on the back, and the extremely fast speed. The leading fish is about 3.5 meters long, and the fish behind are about 2 meters long. Such a fish, such a school of fish, if Jianghu is not wrong, this is what they are. Damn, where did the bluefin golden spear come from? Chapter 398. Bluefin tuna, a kind of tuna and the most expensive kind. It was also called black tuna or bluefin tuna. Although it wasn't as expensive as Chinese bahaba fish, it was still one of the most expensive fishes. This kind of fish was a global cruising fish species. It was delicious, rare, and most importantly, it was very expensive to catch. It was mainly distributed in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans in the Northern Hemisphere. At the same time, this kind of fish was also the fastest fish. Its fastest speed could reach 88 kilometers per hour when hunting. It could swim 24 meters in a second. With such speed, not to mention fishing boats, no ships could be faster than it. It was precisely because of this that this kind of fish was not very easy to catch. But even so, the number of this kind of fish in the world was constantly decreasing. First, this kind of fish couldn't be raised. Because it was a global cruising fish, it needed to constantly swim and eat. It was almost impossible to raise it artificially. It was precisely because of this that Jianghu didn't raise this kind of fish. Second, this kind of fish was really caught a lot. Too many people liked to catch these guys because they were very valuable. The meat of this kind of fish was excellent. It was known as the best beef in the water. It was one of the best materials to make sashimi. It was regarded as a high-class food and a top delicacy all over the world. However, more than 80% of the world's bluefin tuna was consumed by Japanese people. No one would understand the love of this kind of people for bluefin tuna. Sashimi and sushi, these things were only occasionally mixed food in China, but they could be eaten as staple food in Japan. Jianghu once considered raising this kind of fish at the best time because this kind of fish was the same as beef. It was also calculated by part. However, the cheapest one was sold for more than $50 per kilogram. The expensive one could be sold for more than $200 per kilogram. Of course, if it was the whole fish, it was another story. The whole fish was divided into several parts, such as the big belly, the middle belly, the naked body, and the cheeks. The price of each part was different. The best part was naturally the big belly, the middle belly was second, and the naked body was the cheapest. Of course, this was all written down by Jianghu after he read it on the internet. Although he was rich now, he had never eaten this kind of thing before. The best way to cook bluefin tuna was to eat it raw, and Jianghu didn't eat raw things. So after he couldn't raise tuna, Jianghu didn't try this kind of creature. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it, but he wasn't interested. But now that he saw a group of tuna in his own fish farm, Jianghu was really stunned. He doesn't remember having such a thing in his fishery. In fact, the reason why Jianghu fought with the sharks was mainly because of these guys. Big Fool knew about tuna. Although his current IQ was not as good as Xiao Bai and Little Yellow, who were naturally smart mammals, Big Fool's IQ was also about a 5-year-old child. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sensed that Jianghu was coming and asked his wife to ask for help. So he knew that this kind of fish should be very valuable because he also liked to eat it. Of course, he couldn't distinguish between bluefin and yellowfin. In the eyes of sharks, tuna was good. At that time, a bunch of hammerhead sharks were actually chasing this group of fish. However, the fish group was put into Jianghu's territory by Big Fool. As for the sharks, they were stopped by Big Fool. Then the encounter broke out, and this group of tuna entered Jianghu's fish farm. They were instantly attracted by the abundant spirit here. More than a day had passed, and it seemed that these tuna were not going to leave. Looking at these tuna, Jiang Hai's first reaction was not to destroy these guys, because these guys would threaten his fry, but when he found that these tuna didn't attack the fry at will, instead, they ate the small squid and small octopus, he couldn't help but hesitate. This group of tuna were all adult tuna, the big ones were more than 3 meters, and the small ones were more than 2 meters. If they were willing to live here and lay eggs here, it would be a good thing for Jiang Hai. So after hesitating for a moment, he didn't command Big Fool to chase them away. Instead, he let them stay here like the parrot fish he saw in the past. Of course, when these fish swam not far away from him, he deliberately released some of his aura. After appeasing these bluefin golden spears, Jiang Hai still remembered what he had to do. He went to get abalones. It would be delicious at home. There was a chef at home, and it would be a waste if he didn't make good use of it. After getting enough abalones, Jiang Hai floated to the surface of the sea and got on the boat again. He said goodbye to Big Fool and drove the boat back to his manor. In the villa, when Xiaoya saw the huge abalones that Jiang Hai got, she couldn't help but smile. It seemed that Jiang Hai's place was really rich in ingredients, and he could eat anything he wanted. That night, Jiang Hai ate the abalones and shark's fin of his dreams. He took a picture and sent it to his bad friends. Fu Yuan, Su Wei, and the others were going crazy. How could it be so infuriating? Abalones and shark's fin, what a waste of natural resources. For the next few days, Jiang Hai felt that he was living quite comfortably. After waking up in the morning, he would run, practice martial arts, and eat breakfast. Then, he would go to get the ingredients that he wanted to eat today. Although his place wasn't as rich in ingredients as Hua Xia's, it was still the mountain beasts, cloud swallows, land cattle, sheep, and seafood. His place could be considered to have everything. Lobsters, abalones, sea fish, sea cucumbers, sea urchins, crabs, prawns, beef, mutton, wild boar, wyverns, pheasants, hares, turkeys, and all kinds of birds. He had everything here. As long as you could roughly think of an ingredient, he could basically get it. Of course, he couldn't get some of the more special ingredients, such as bear paws, monkey heads, and so on. He couldn't get them, and he had no way to get them. But even so, with these wild animals, Xiaoya's culinary skills were at its peak. These days were probably the happiest days for Jiang Hai since he came here, because there was really a lot of delicious food. And these days, although Jiang Hai didn't give Xiaoya any medical treatment, because she ate these things every day and absorbed enough spiritual energy, her illness was gradually getting better. Although she was still afraid of light now, there was a trace of color on her face at night. Bernice's heart was tied to her sister. So even if it was only a slight improvement, she saw it in her eyes. After doing a full set of examinations, she was very curious. When did Jiang Hai treat her illness? Because Xiaoya didn't know when Jiang Hai treated her illness. But it was the best thing that could happen to her. So, she was more at ease to live here with Xiaoya. In the blink of an eye, they had been here for 10 days, and Jiang Hai also received a call from the old man yesterday. He told him that he got the dolphin. After he told the old man his home address, early the next morning, 5 huge trailers appeared outside Jiang Hai's manor. When Jiang Hai came out, the old man sitting in the front passenger seat of the first car also jumped up and enthusiastically hugged Jiang Hai. "Hey, brother, the thing you wanted, I brought it for you." Patting Jiang Hai's shoulder, the old man said excitedly. "Then I'll have to trouble you. Let's go to the beach." After smiling at the old man, Jiang Hai led the 5 trailers to the beach. Of course, Jiang Hai also sat in the truck. Looking at the scenery outside Jiang Hai's manor, the old man couldn't help but sigh. Brother, the environment here is really good. So many cows, and the manor, it's really beautiful. I heard that Winthrop has been developing recently, I wonder how it is going?" Looking at Jiang Hai, the old man said slowly. He heard that Jiang Hai was a rich man, a billionaire, but he really didn't have close contact with these people. "It's okay, I'm not in Winthrop town, so I can't get too much information. Listening to the old man's words, Jianghu also chuckled. The old man's sigh was indeed about Jianghu's manner, but the latter part was about Jianghu's words. Jianghu is stupid, there is no need to tell others about the Winthrop development plan. Oh, I see. Hearing Jianghu's words, the old man also chuckled. This was obviously not what he wanted to ask. He asked on behalf of someone else. Although he has some money, he doesn't have enough to invest in the development of a small town. It seems that Winthrop's construction has attracted some people's attention, but thinking of this, Jianghu was relieved. This is just Jianghu's excuse, but if he wants to develop smoothly, this is inevitable. Moreover, this laboratory might be able to give him some surprises, such as the improved species they developed. The two people had their own thoughts, and then they chatted with each other. Not long after, 5 trailers had arrived at Jianghu's dock, where Ai Dehua and the others were already prepared. It was true that dolphins were mammals. They also needed to breathe oxygen, but they could not be directly exposed to the air. That would kill them. Therefore, to get them into the sea, it was not by brute force. They might have to jump back into the sea by themselves. Instead, they have to make a slide, like a slide, and put the dolphins on it and let them slide directly into the sea. This slide was made by Ai Dehua and the others. The main material is some scrap iron and wooden planks. Of course, in order to prevent the dolphins from being scratched, they specially wrapped it with cloth. The slide is 30 meters long, just enough to send the dolphins out of the shallow water and directly into the sea about 4 meters deep. At this depth, they can swim normally. After everything was ready, the 5 trailers were driven over one by one in an upside-down manner. They aimed their butts at the slide. Then, some workers climbed on top of the trailers and untied the ropes that had been tied there. Chapter 399. With a hua, the curtain on the first trailer was pulled down. In an instant, a huge aquarium appeared in front of Jianghu and the others. Under the illumination of the sun, it flashed a different light. In the clear water, 4 dolphins were wandering slightly anxiously. Maybe because they felt the light, these dolphins couldn't help but stop and float in the water, looking at Jianghu and others outside. Looking at the curious and anxious eyes of these dolphins, Jianghu also smiled. From today on, these guys are his soldiers. Walking to the front of the trailer, Jianghu also put his hand on the glass. The dolphins also turned around curiously and swam around Jianghu's hand. Seeing this scene, Jianghu liked these little guys even more. These 5 dolphins are white dolphins from New York. In fact, 11 of the 20 dolphins here are from New York. There is a marine park there that is about to go bankrupt, so it is selling sea beasts. If you want killer whales, I can get them for you. Looking at Jianghu's appearance, the old man here came up and said to Jianghu with a smile. Killer whales? Forget it, I can't afford to raise them here. These things are good. When can you put them into the sea? Hearing his words, Jianghu was a little moved in an instant. To put it bluntly, Jianghu still prefers those powerful creatures. Dolphins, it's not that big of a deal. It's still good to use them as guards. Anytime. Now that the weather is very warm, there is no need to let the dolphins adapt to the temperature of the sea, so they can be released at any time. Under the joint command of Jianghu and the old man, the trailer opened the sink, and the seawater poured down the slide into the sea. The dolphins, because of the current, were almost instantly washed down. As for Jianghu, he had already stood by the sink and looked at the dolphin coming down. Jianghu's hand instantly patted it. A piece of spiritual energy, unknowingly, had been injected into the dolphin's body. Today, Jianghu's spiritual energy is estimated to be consumed a lot, but no pain, no gain. For his own safety underwater, some sacrifices are inevitable. After the spiritual energy was injected, the dolphin was stunned for a moment, then it recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye and rushed directly into the sea. However, after entering the sea, it did not leave, but after swimming a few laps there, its head emerged from the water and cried cheerfully at Jianghu. Only Jianghu knew that it was shouting at him. Other people thought that it was calling other companions. At this time, the second dolphin also flowed down, and Jianghu's spiritual energy was injected again. Then the third dolphin also came down, but when the fourth and fifth dolphins came down, the water dried up, so they did not come down. However, the workers here were already prepared. After the water was released, they immediately entered the water tank. These two dolphins were pushed out. Of course, Jianghu also joined the ranks of these people. Two streams of spiritual energy were also injected. At this point, the first dolphin cart had all entered the water. After entering the water, the dolphins did not leave, but continued to stay in the water. While playing there, they also looked at Jianghu. The dolphins' IQ wasn't low. Coupled with the nourishment of spiritual energy, they instantly understood that Jianghu was their master from today onwards. They had to listen to Jianghu's words. This was the most important thing. Next was the second car, the third car, the fourth car, and the fifth car. Jianghu would give each dolphin a stream of spiritual energy. After the 20 dolphins were all released into the sea, Jianghu also waved to the dolphins secretly, and the dolphins immediately dived into the water and disappeared. Looking at these dolphins leaving, the old man couldn't help but be speechless. You say, you just released them into the water, will they run away? Looking at Jianghu, the old man said with some embarrassment. It doesn't matter, if they run away, just treat it as setting them free. Here is your 200,000 yuan. However, Jianghu was very confident about this. He chuckled and said to the old man. Hearing Jianghu's words, the old man also gave him a thumbs up. This guy's heart is really big, 250,000 yuan, just like that? But even if it's like that, it has nothing to do with me. I just want to earn money, I don't care about other things. After putting away Jianghu's 200,000 yuan check, he smiled and left with the trailer. Jianghu looked at their backs and also smiled. After the old man left, Ai Dehua and the others also put away the slide, but they didn't directly dismantle it. This was because their boss might have other tricks up his sleeves. They should take this as a precaution. After they packed up and went to work, Jianghu rolled up his trouser legs and slowly walked into the sea. Just as he entered the sea, the dolphins that had just dived into the water came back. They densely surrounded Jianghu, and their bean-like eyes stared at Jianghu. The eyes of dolphins are naturally very small, and the reason why they are more popular than sharks is that they have saved people before, and also because they are born with a smiling face. Now, these guys are lying beside Jianghu, acting cute and cute. Even Jianghu can't help but feel that they are cute, but he quickly recovered this feeling. What's cute about them? A pure man like him has nothing to do with it. In the future, you will be the guards of this sea area. You have to protect this area from the attacks of sharks outside. You will find 2 sharks in the sea that have the same aura as you. They will be your companions in the future. You can't kill each other. Jianghu patted the heads of the dolphins in front of him and slowly said to them. After hearing Jianghu's words, these dolphins didn't know if they really understood or not, but they all slapped their tails. Looking at their appearance, Jianghu chuckled. In any case, these guys are the guardian beasts of his own waters. Once again, Jianghu injected spiritual qi into the bodies of these little guys. After that, Jianghu pushed them into the sea to hunt for food, while at the same time, digesting the spiritual qi in their bodies. After these dolphins left, Jianghu also sat down on the beach. It was the first time Jianghu tried to release 40 streams of spiritual energy in such a short time. Even he couldn't help but feel a little dizzy, and his vision was a little blurry. Spiritual energy is actually the same as the male thing in Jianghu's body. It can be released, but it can't be released too many times. Releasing it 40 times is almost like doing it 40 times in a row. Even if he doesn't die, he will be half crippled. Although Jianghu is not half crippled, he still felt his heartbeat accelerate, and at the same time, his vision was a little blurry. This is a sign of a lack of oxygen. It seems that it's better not to release spiritual energy on such a large scale in the future. Now Jianghai's spiritual energy is equivalent to 3 pieces of spiritual energy. After a few months of development, the scales on his body have almost increased to half of all. According to Jianghai's estimation, maybe in more than half a year, he will almost be able to upgrade again. Jianghai doesn't know the specific time, because he has been using spiritual energy while increasing his scales. Just like today, he directly used 400,000 spiritual energy in one day, and he saved it for 3 days in vain. But fortunately, Jianghai doesn't have any place where he needs to use spiritual energy from scales, so he can slowly save it. After resting here for about half an hour, Jianghai stood up again and returned to his villa with light steps. But as soon as he went back, he met Bernice. Looking at Jianghai's light steps, Bernice frowned. "Hey, why did you come out?" Seeing Bernice, Jianghai smiled and greeted her. "I came out to bask in the sun. I'm not my sister, but Jianghai, I treat you as a friend, so I'm telling you. You should pay attention to your body. Although your body is good, if you continue to be so frivolous, be careful not to die on a woman's belly." Hearing Jianghai's words, Bernice just said a few words, and then said to Jianghai earnestly, "I went to release dolphins, I'm tired." Hearing her words, Jianghai's old face couldn't help but blush. What does she mean by dying on a woman's belly? If he wants, a woman will die on his belly. Bah, this is not the point. The point is that Jianghai didn't go to find a woman. "Okay, I know, we're all adults, you don't have to hide it, you're on your own." Hearing Jianghai's words, Bernice waved her hand, and then no longer cared about Jianghai. She went directly to the place where Jianghai usually basked in the sun, lay down comfortably on the recliner, picked up the mobile phone and swiped it. Looking at her infuriating look, Jianghai really felt that he was F***ked. *T, I can't clear my name even if I jump into the Yellow River. Seeing that she didn't want to listen anymore, Jianghai cursed and continued to walk home. Jianghai is not a person who is too persistent and too pretentious. If he can't explain it clearly, he can't explain it clearly, and he is too lazy to explain it. Now he just wants to go back and sleep, he is too tired. That thing, is it so interesting? Looking at Jianghai who was too lazy to explain, Bernice whispered in a low voice. Growing up, her friends around her said that thing more than once. However, she really hasn't tried it. Looking at Jianghai's weak footsteps, she couldn't help but chuckle. Obviously, the recent improvement of her sister's condition made her feel a lot better. She picked up the mobile phone and continued to swipe it. Jianghai directly lay on the bed and fell into a deep sleep, he was too tired. He slept until the evening, and at this time, Xiaoya had already prepared dinner. Just as Jianghai was eating delicious dinner to replenish his strength, a call came to his mobile phone. Chapter 400. Huh. It's her. Looking at the contact displayed on the phone, Jianghai, who was stuffing food into his mouth, couldn't help but stop for a moment. He muttered with some surprise, because the number of times this person called him was not many. Even when she came to slaughter cows, it was someone else who called and contacted Jianghai. This also made Jianghai feel a little relieved about this person. It seems that the other party really has no interest in him, so he was more relieved. "Hello, Chili, what's the matter?" Swiping his phone, Jianghai put the phone to his ear and asked the other side of the phone. When they heard that it was Chili, the 4 girls at the dinner table immediately pricked up their ears and listened to the content of Jianghai's phone. Their eyes also moved from the delicious food to Jianghai's phone. "Jianghai, did you hear that?" Listening to Jianghai's voice, Chili still said to Jianghai with a little excitement on the phone, but to be honest, Jianghai listened for a long time, but he didn't hear anything. Listen to what?" Hearing Chi Li's voice, Jianghai asked curiously. He really didn't know what to listen to. "Listen to the sound of our opening. Today is the opening day of our restaurant." Hearing Jianghai's dull voice, Chi Li couldn't help but say angrily. To be honest, Chi Li really didn't want to call Jianghai. This didn't mean that she really had any prejudice against Jianghu, but it was because she was really afraid. As soon as she called, Jianghu would divorce her or break up with her. Although the two had never held hands, Qili really had some thoughts about Jianghu now. At this time, she was actually very afraid. In the past, she asked her assistant to call Jianghu. Although it was her assistant who was talking, she had always been listening. Until last time, when the cow was being slaughtered, Jianghu's voice showed a trace of dissatisfaction and said, "Ah, she is really busy." After Qili heard it, today's call was made. To be honest, Qili also struggled for many days to call Jianghu, but she still thought that she should tell Jianghu. "Oh, then congratulations, you have another cross-border business project." Hearing Qili's words, Jianghu was very calm. As for what Lu Li said about their restaurant, Jianghu simply didn't take it to heart. He continued to eat as he spoke. As he ate, he said, "Aren't you nervous? This restaurant, the main dish is your beef." Listening to Jianghu's calm words, Qili was just about to say that this was their restaurant, but then she remembered that Jianghu didn't pay a penny. Moreover, with her current relationship with Jianghu, it was indeed a bit inappropriate to say this. So after hesitating, she changed her words. "Oh, you don't have to worry about this. My beef won't have a problem. It sells very well in the United States. If you don't want it, call me at any time, and I will return it to you. With our friendship, returning the beef won't be a problem." These days, whether it was Zhang Dihai or Prawalton, in fact, they were all inquiring about Jianghu's beef. To be honest, they now regretted giving Qili 1,000 heads. If Qili didn't want it, it couldn't be better. "Humph, don't even think about it, you blockhead. Okay, I have to go entertain the guests." Listening to Jianghu's understatement, Qili couldn't help but stomp her foot, gritted her teeth, and said hatefully, "This Jianghu really deserves to die, doesn't he understand my thoughts at all?" But then again, Qili also didn't quite understand her thoughts. After saying this, Qili hung up the phone, leaving only Jianghu on the other side of the phone, who was still in a daze. Ugh, her temper is really getting worse and worse. Shaking his head, Jianghu put down the phone and continued to eat the dishes in front of him. On the other side, Bernice and Xiaoya looked at each other. After hesitating, Xiaoya asked tentatively, "That, Jianghu, the person who called just now, oh, I don't know how to put it. She's my wife, but I've never touched her before. Our relationship isn't very good, but we're still maintaining this status. According to my estimation, this status is about to come to an end. Once it's over, I can get a proper girlfriend. It's really hard to live without a clear female lead." Hearing Xiaoya's words, Jianghu also said with a smile. That self-deprecating tone made Bernice and Xiaoya stunned. "What do you mean by no female lead? And what do you mean by considered your wife?" Yes, no, what do you mean by considered your wife?" Looking at Jianghu, Bernice couldn't help but put down the chopsticks in her hand and looked at Jianghu seriously. "Haven't you read novels? Even if it's a TV series, there must be a male lead and a female lead. Now let's assume that I am the male lead, but there is no female lead. As for what you said..." Ugh. Hearing Bernice's words, Jianghu didn't stop talking. While talking, he explained to her, but he couldn't continue. "It's because of this woman. Back then, she only used our father, Jiang, to stabilize the company. Later, she kicked our father away. When Jiang became capable, she came to find him again. Jiang was really too cowardly. He didn't know what she said, and then he acquiesced to such a relationship." Seeing that Jianghu couldn't continue, Delaina on the other side spoke while working hard with her chopsticks. Hearing her words, Bernice and Xiaoya looked at Jianghu with some surprise. They really didn't think that this man would be so cowardly. "Cough, what are you talking about? I'm going out, you guys eat slowly." Hearing what they said, Jianghu's old face blushed for no reason. Speaking of which, does he hate Qili? He hated her at the beginning, but now he doesn't have a good impression of her. Even if she is very rich, she is not as rich as Jianghu. Even if she is very beautiful, Jianghu has a lot of beautiful girls around him. As for why Jianghu became a coward, in fact, Jianghu himself didn't know, but he was sure that even if Jianghu and Ai Xiaoxi were together, they would never be together. The position of the heroine was destined to not be with her. Taking some food, Jianghu left the restaurant, went back to his room, and then entered the warehouse from the other side, where he had been keeping Azalina Vicabrio. These days, Jianghu was actually a little hesitant about Azalina Vicabrio. This woman was indeed harmless to him, and she was not sent by others, but after all, she wanted to kill him. Killing her like this, Jianghu didn't have the heart to do it, but letting her go like this, Jianghu still felt that he was losing out. So these days, he had been taking care of her, giving her good food and drinks, and then locking her up. As for the scenes that were not suitable for children, or those that Jianghu had seen in some Japanese blockbusters, they didn't happen here. After all, this woman was not an ordinary person, nor was she an ordinary degenerate, but a real killer. If she bit Jianghu when he wasn't paying attention, wouldn't Jianghu regret it for the rest of his life? So he had been very hesitant about what to do. It was the same today. When he went in, Azalina Vicabrio was reading a novel. At this time, in her cell, there were a lot of novels, all of which were bought by Jianghu. According to her, she liked to read these things a long time ago. It's just that she didn't have the means to read them before, nor did she have the means to do so. She also didn't have the means to read them before. Compared to Jianghu, who was more hesitant the more he knew about her, Azalina was very calm. Because she had already accepted all the facts. If Jianghu wanted to kill her, she would let him. It was useless for her to resist. People like her should have died long ago. If Jianghu wanted to do something to her, she would not resist. On the contrary, she liked to stay here. At least here, she didn't have to worry about whether she would be killed, whether she would be betrayed by the organization, or whether she would die in a mission. Here, she had food, drinks, and a place to live. To be honest, if Jianghu wanted to lock her up like this for the rest of her life, she was willing. For people like her, freedom had long been gone. This kind of life was very good. You're here. Recently, your cooking skills have really improved a lot. It's very delicious. I once went to Wuxia for a mission. I have to admit that when it comes to eating, Wuxia people are always the best in the world. Seeing Jianghu coming over again, Azalina put down the book in her hand and said to Jianghu with a smile on her face. Hearing her words, Jianghu was also a little embarrassed. These things were not made by him. This was made by a guest in my manor. I also admire her cooking skills. Putting down the lunch box in his hand, Jianghu turned and sat opposite her, chatting with her for a while. Only 4 people were here. Jianghu, Daliana, Marian, and Aphrodite knew that Jianghu, Daliana, Marian, and Aphrodite were here. Of course, Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi, who returned to China, also knew about this place, but in this manner, only these 4 people knew about this place. And the only one who would come in to talk to her seemed to be Jianghu. Every day, this little bit of communication time was pretty good for her. While Jianghu's manner was calm and tranquil, on this planet, there were 2 groups of people who weren't very quiet. One group naturally came from Wuxia. The opening of Qi Li's restaurant naturally attracted a large number of people to come and cause trouble. Among them, there were a few people she didn't want to see. For example, Jianghu. The people who made waves on the other side still had some relationship with Jianghu because these people were from Boston. And in Boston, there were not many people who dared to argue with Jianghu and dared to show off to Jianghu. Except for those guys who were not afraid of death, there seemed to be no one else. Chapter 401. Who, hanging up the phone call with Jianghu, Qi Li's mood couldn't be described. Joy? Maybe a little. Anger? There was also a little, but it was more of a sweet feeling. Of course, she knew that this was just her own wishful thinking. It was really not an easy thing to change her role in Jianghai's heart. Putting the phone into her pocket, Qili took a deep breath. Regardless of Jianghai's attitude, she had to do her restaurant well first. Congratulations, congratulations. However, just as Qili sorted out her mood, a hateful voice was heard. Qili looked back. The person who made this voice was none other than her biggest enemy, the Yin family. This time, a lot of people came to the Yin family. Not only the head of the Yin family, Sun, came, but his two sons, Zhangyong and Jianghu also came. When they saw Qili, their eyes couldn't help but narrow, but the messages revealed were completely different. Dishuan only revealed a thick killing intent, while Zhangyong revealed hatred. Jianghu, on the other hand, was somewhat conflicted. There was some love, some fear, and also some hatred and jealousy. Yes, he was jealous, but not of Qili, but of the person who Qili just hung up the phone, Jianghai. What are you doing here? Is the matter of your backer solved? Looking at the people of the Yin family coming over, Qili also walked up slowly and said with a light face. She knew that the Yin family's recent situation was not very good. Since their backer's son was solved by Jianghai, the evidence of his crime was also sent back to the country. However, there was one thing that was not very good in the country. That was, there were too many people in the officialdom who didn't do well in the future. So as long as you gave up your position, at most, you would go to a high-level sanatorium or a prison in a city for a while, and it would be over. The person was no longer around, but the favor was still there. There were too many loopholes. However, he had already stepped down. The Yin family's biggest shield was gone just like that. Therefore, the Yin family had been looking for a new shield for the past few days. During the search, Qili did not let them off lightly. Not only did some departments come to check the accounts and hygiene every 2 to 3 days. Moreover, they were also trying their best to suppress the market share. In this short period of time, at least 1/3 of the Yin family's assets had evaporated. Fortunately, this was not a listed company. Otherwise, it would have evaporated even more. Qili and the Yin family did not have any mercy. If she wanted to fight, she would kill the entire family. This was also the reason why she chose to open for business at this time. Looking at the hatred in their eyes, Qili was very satisfied. Niece Qi, our families are considered aristocratic families. It's not very polite for you to speak to your uncle like that. Narrowing his eyes at Qili, Dishuan said with an ashen face. He had never been so embarrassed in his life to be ridiculed by a junior. Polite? I'm sorry, when you die, you must inform me. I want to see how you die. Please, forgive me for not entertaining you. Hearing Dishuan's words, Qili snorted coldly and said with a serious face. You. Hearing Qili's words, Dishuan, Zhangyong, and Jianghu's faces were quite ugly. Hey, they are guests. We are doing business. We can't drive people out. Let them in. The commotion here soon attracted the attention of others. For example, the vice president of Qili's faction, Zhao Jianpain, who was helping here. Seeing the tense atmosphere at this time, he walked over and said softly to Qili. Qili also knew that today was her opening day. If she was unhappy, it would also affect her restaurant. So, she could only not feel upset. After glancing at the Yin family, she went to receive others. As for the people from the Yin family, Zhao Jianpain, who was more shrewd, would receive them. However, Zhao Jianpain didn't have a good impression of the family that had forced his old friend to death, so he just said a few perfunctory words and asked someone to take them to the restaurant. Today, 4 of Qili's Western restaurants were opened at the same time, but the other 3 were open as usual. Only the main restaurant was not open to the public. It was only used to entertain those distinguished guests. This wasn't a cafeteria or a restaurant that booked the whole place for a wedding. The dishes were all big tables and there were at most 6 guests at each table. They were placed in some partitioned private rooms. The atmosphere of the whole place was quite good. Except for the Yin family, the others were quite happy. After seeing the Yin family come in, most of the people who were talking happily shut their mouths temporarily. In this circle, everyone knew that the Yin family and the Qi family didn't get along with each other. Wuxia people were more particular about the doctrine of the mean. They wouldn't offend the other party if they could. The essence of life was to be a fence-sitter. But even so, no one deliberately came over to make friends with the Yin family. They just pretended not to see it. What a bastard. A tiger will be bullied by a dog. Sitting in the compartment led by the waiter, and Deshuan had never been wronged like this in his life. He slammed the table and said with a face full of anger. In fact, he came here this time because he wanted to see if there was a chance for reconciliation. However, it seemed that reconciliation was impossible now. Dad, since we can't achieve the purpose of coming here, why don't we leave? Looking at Deshuan's angry face, and Zhang Yong was obviously a little unhappy. Since he was 30 years old, he hadn't been insulted like this. We can't come here in vain. We're also in the food and beverage business. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. We'd like to see why that little girl Chili wants to get involved in our food and beverage industry and open a high-end restaurant. Hearing his eldest son's words, and Deshuan's eyes narrowed. This old fox's shrewdness was not comparable to his two sons. Jianghu, go and ask them to serve the dishes. Hearing his father's words, and Zhang Yong also nodded. Indeed, they couldn't go back empty-handed. Looking at the other tables, the dishes were already served one after another, and Zhang Yong also said to Jianghu. Oh. But obviously, Jianghu's mind was now focused on Qili. Hearing Zhang Yong's words, he was stunned for a moment. Then he stood up and asked the waiter next to him to serve the dishes. The opening of a Western restaurant was a little different from a Chinese restaurant. A Chinese restaurant was naturally lively. But a Western restaurant was basically more elegant. Qili aimed at the upper class of the imperial capital. If it was too lively and too common, she wouldn't do it. So, except for some flower baskets at the door, the inside was very unique. Not only these guests were sitting in the compartment, but they also didn't need to order the food. They were served a Western set meal. It wasn't the traditional set meal with 13 dishes, but a simplified set meal with 5 dishes. Among the frozen appetizers, soup, hot appetizers, main dishes, and desserts, today's frozen appetizers were foie gras, the soup was French thick soup, and the hot appetizers were French baked snails. The main dish was naturally the beef produced in Jianghu's manner, and the dessert was a small piece of truffle cake. When eating the appetizers, the French thick soup, and the French baked snails, the Yin family was actually a little disdainful. The reason why the Yin family could gain a firm foothold in the imperial capital's catering industry was not only because of their strong background, but also because of their strength. They also had a Western restaurant. To be honest, these 3 dishes might not be as good as the ones in their own restaurant. After all, the chef in their restaurant was a 3-star Michelin chef, unlike Qili, who only hired a 2-star chef at the beginning, and dismissed him directly because he might be interested in her. Now, they only found a 1-star chef. Although a Michelin 1-star chef was also an honor, his strength was indeed a lot worse than a 3-star chef. However, Qili wasn't worried because her trump card wasn't these ordinary dishes. When the main dish, the French red wine steak, was served, the aroma wafted out. The Yin family's heart, which was originally a little relieved, was instantly raised. Looking at the steak in front of them, the 3 father and son glanced at each other. They felt that the situation wasn't very good. When Deshuan cut a small piece and put it in his mouth, he knew that things were really troublesome. Ugh! A scream came from an alley in the South District of Boston. A man flew into the alley as if he was hit by a car. With a bang, he knocked down the trash can behind him. His face was full of pain and helplessness. Beside him, there were already many people lying there at this time. Their bodies and faces were covered with bruises. Some people's arms and legs were obviously broken. At this time, they were holding their injured places, but they didn't even dare to scream. Please, please, please let me go. I know I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. The man who knocked over the trash can also endured the severe pain at this time. He slowly got up, knelt on the ground, and shouted loudly at the entrance of the alley. You have a lot of courage. You dare to sell in my territory. Do you really not know me, or are you really not afraid of death? In the voice of this person, a group of people slowly walked out of the dark alley. If there was a local in Boston at this time, the better people would recognize the leader. It was Billy Wallen, known as Crazy Billy. Now in Boston's underworld, it could be said that they were the most powerful group of people in the gray area. They relied on the funds that they got from a rich man in Wuxia to wantonly recruit in Boston. Now, they had gone from a small gang of less than 100 people to a big boss in Boston's underworld. His underlings and henchmen were nearly 1,000 people. Everyone knew that provoking him was almost the same as provoking the Grim Reaper. Behind him, a strong figure stood there firmly, staring at the person in front of him motionlessly. Chapter 402. Mr. Wallen, I know I was wrong. We were just trying to get some money to spend. Please be magnanimous, I beg of you. Listening to Billy Wallen's words, the man's tears, snot, and his own blood were all over his face. I'm not a cold-blooded person. I don't care if you sell things to make a living, but you hit my men and dared to make a fuss. That's your fault. Now, let's see your sincerity. Billy Wallen stood up with a smile and looked at the man in front of him with disdain. This guy wanted to survive in Boston, yet he dared to provoke Billy Wallen. He was courting death. Billy Wallen took out a dagger from one of his men behind him and threw it in front of the man. The man looked at the dagger. He knew what Billy Wallen meant. Billy Wallen wanted to see his sincerity. It seemed like he would not be able to keep one of his hands today, but he really could not bear to give up one of his hands just like that. He trembled as he picked up the dagger. Suddenly, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Mr. Wallen, I think it's better for you to die instead of me. Looking at his own face reflected in the dagger, the man shouted and jumped up from the ground in an instant. He stabbed the dagger at Billy Wallen's chest. Billy Warren smiled as he gently took a step back. Just as he was about to continue, a pair of huge hands stretched out from Billy Warren's side. Without saying a word, one hand grabbed his wrist while the other hand grabbed his shoulder. In an instant, the two hands exerted force, causing a cracking sound to be heard as the man's arm was pulled outwards. Yes, it was bent directly. Feeling the sharp pain from his arm, the man could not help but scream. Unfortunately, his screams didn't bring him any mercy. The big guy who broke his hand just now let him go and retreated. Billy Wallen's other subordinates quickly rushed over and gave him a round of punches and kicks. In less than 10 seconds, this person had already breathed out more than he breathed in. He lay on the ground, rolled his eyes, and looked helplessly at the sky. In this world, people like them really couldn't survive. Get rid of him. Looking at the man's appearance, Billy Wallen smiled disdainfully, turned around, and walked out of the alley. His underlings grabbed the man at this time and put him in a car that had already been parked at a certain port. They poured him a lot of alcohol, pressed the accelerator, and the car rushed toward the sea crazily. It was foreseeable that even if this man was discovered in the future, he would not be able to get away with it. It was not that the Boston police were good-for-nothings, but because in this world, how many people would care about the life and death of an underling who sold flour? Since they had embarked on this path, their ending had already been decided. On the other side, Billy Wallen sat in a car and returned to his gathering place. But when he returned to his gathering place, he found that a group of people had been waiting for him for a long time. Looking at these people, Billy Wallen couldn't help but curse. Because these people were none other than the people who repeatedly asked him to kill Jianghu, but he didn't want to kill Jianghu. Jianghu is a rich man, and he seems to have a lot of real power in Winthrop. Although he now has thousands of underlings, if he confronts the police head-on for Jianghu, he will definitely die in the end. After all, this is a legal society, not the time when the Grey Gang controlled the United States decades ago. Once the matter gets out of hand, not to mention the police, even the army can come to suppress it. No matter how arrogant he is, he doesn't dare to fight with the state. That's why he has been delaying and not looking for trouble with Jianghu. If it weren't for the fact that his startup funds came from these people, he might have abandoned them long ago. Now, looking at these people again, it would be strange if he was in a good mood. Don't look at us like that, Billy. This time, we are not here to ask you to kill Jianghu, we are here to ask you to cooperate with him. Looking at Billy Wallen's unhappy expression, the leader of the black-clothed men said with a smile. Cooperation? Why would I cooperate with a cattle farmer? Billy Wallen asked puzzledly when he heard the words of the man in black. That's because you don't know how much money he makes from raising cattle. The highest quality beef on the market now comes from Jianghu's manor, and it is even sold to Wuxia. Do you know how much he earns from one cow? $150,000. $150,000. He has 20,000 cows, that's $3 billion, aren't you tempted? Looking at Billy Wallen, the man in black chuckled, then said with a serious face. When he heard 3 billion, Billy Wallen's heart was indeed shocked. In the United States, there are urban and rural areas, and people in the city also like to call people in the countryside country bumpkins. Originally, he thought that Jianghu was just a cattle farmer, and his total assets, including land, were only $800 million, but he really didn't think that raising cattle was so profitable. 20,000 cows are worth $3 billion? Since when are dollars so easy to earn? Really? Looking at the man in black beside him, Billy Wallen asked with some doubts. Of course. Hearing his words, the man in black also laughed. This is the news that his master told him. Then what do you want? Seeing the sincerity of the man in black, Billy Wallen became suspicious again. We want his beef. As long as you take over the manor or cooperate with him, we want all the beef in his manor. We will sell it at the highest price. Unless we don't want it, we can't sell it to others. It seems that the Yin family saw the profits from Jianghu's beef. Indeed, it was on the opening day of Chi Li's restaurant. When the plate of beef from Jianghu's manor appeared, it attracted the attention of countless people. The people present were basically elites or high-level members of society. They had eaten delicious food before. However, to be honest, they were a little surprised to see such delicious beef. The beef was juicy, but there were no veins. The feeling of the fat and meat melting in their mouths, and the rich taste of the beef exploding on their taste buds made everyone a little dazed. Subconsciously, they picked up their knives and forks and ate piece by piece. When the beef was finished, everyone felt even hungrier. The desire for the beef made these high-level people calm down. There were some people from the quality inspection department who wanted to take a look at the kitchen because they were afraid that there were things that the country did not allow. But when they got to the kitchen, they realized that the beef was good because of the meat. The ingredients were very simple. Immediately, many people inquired about the origin of Chi Li's beef. However, Chi Li and the Chi family naturally wouldn't say anything. Therefore, everyone was confused. Only Jianghu's and family knew that the beef might have something to do with Jianghu. After a careful investigation, sure enough, the beef that had caused a sensation in the upper class of American society also came from Jianghu's place. This made them more and more panicked. If Jianghu fully supported Chi Li, then Chi Li's restaurant business would be a huge blow to their family. However, if they were to buy such beef, they could foresee that Jianghu wouldn't sell it. Since they couldn't get it through normal channels, they could only use other channels. Billy Wallen was the best candidate. They were very clear about Billy Wallen's greed. If he really managed to get Jianghu's manor, it would be beneficial to them. If he couldn't get it, then Jianghu and Billy Wallen would definitely have a conflict. If Billy Wallen got rid of Jianghu, that would be something they wanted to see the most. If they wanted the fish to take the bait, they had to set the bait. A conflict between Jianghu and Billy Wallen was something they wanted to see the most. Hey, now that you mention it, I am really interested in this guy's manner. Billy Wallen touched his chin and said with a smile. Looking at his face, the man in black knew that this greedy guy was tempted. Just like Mark said, as long as there was an appropriate profit, capital would be bold. If there was a 10% profit, it was guaranteed to be used everywhere. If there was a 2% profit, it would be active. If there was a 50% profit, it would take risks. If there was a 100% profit, it would dare to trample on all human laws. If there was a 300% profit, it would dare to commit any crime, even at the risk of being hanged. In Billy Wallen's eyes, Jianghu was a real fat sheep. Of course, he wasn't someone who would believe everything the man in black said. However, if he investigated himself and found out that Jianghu really had a lot of profit, he might get involved. In his opinion, Jianghu was nothing more than a rich man from the countryside. It was like a child walking on the street with a piece of gold. As long as someone wanted to, he was destined to be unable to keep the gold. The Walmart Group could help him block some of the pressure from the business and political world, but for these people, the Walmart Group was nothing. For these desperate desperados, there was nothing better than green dollars. Therefore, when Billy Wallen heard about the $3 billion, he had already made up his mind. That night, Billy Wallen's men asked around and collected information about Jianghu. In the end, they heard that Jianghu's cows were indeed very valuable, but half of the 20,000 cows couldn't be sold. Even so, the cows in Jianghu's manor were worth $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion, not $150,000. When he heard this, Billy Wallen's eyes lit up. If he could get the money or the cows, he didn't mind taking some risks. There were only a few police officers in Winthrop. As long as he didn't have a direct confrontation with the government probably wouldn't do anything to him. Just like that, a plan about Jianghu's manor gradually took shape in Billy Wallen's treacherous mind. Chapter 403. You just lie down like this every day? Are you really okay? Looking at Jianghu lying on the recliner in front of her and playing with his mobile phone, Bernice said with a look of displeasure. She saw him go out in the morning to buy ingredients and then lie down here. It was really leisurely. What's the matter with me? Hearing Bernice's words, Jianghu asked strangely. In his manner, everything is going according to plan. There are still more than 15,000 cows left and they will all be sold out in 2 batches. These are the work of Robbins Garcia. Jianghu is only responsible for making money and paying for other things. He still trusts Robbins. As the saying goes, don't doubt the people you use and don't use the people you doubt. If they play any tricks under his nose, then they won't be able to find such a good job in the future. The fishery has not officially started to make money. Although the fish have risen a lot, it will take at least a year to raise them. That is to say, the fish can only be officially harvested in March next year. Now it is mainly a monitoring period to see if the fish, crabs, shrimps, lobsters, and so on will be sick. If the food is not enough, they need to add some food. These are all the responsibility of Edward Anderson. Like the cowboys, they can't find such a good job. The grape winery has just planted the grape trees in March this year. Although it is said that the older the grape trees, the better, Jianghu's grapes are different from ordinary grapes. He added aura to them. But even so, the grape growth period is half a year. If he wants to harvest the grapes to make wine, he has to wait until at least September. If he wants to make ice wine, he has to wait until the frost. However, Boston is not very suitable for making ice wine, because the cold time here is still relatively late, unlike in Canada. There is frost in October because it is too far north. Almost many places are near the Arctic Circle. Therefore, the ice wine produced there is also the best in the world because the frost time is the earliest. Jianghu mainly wants to make red wine this year, ice wine and other things. He will talk about it later. There was almost no need for Jianghu to be busy with work. There were people running the ranch, the fishery, and the winery. He didn't need to worry about the hygiene of the room. Every day, when Delina and Marion cleaned up their own rooms, they would clean up Jianghu's room for him. The pets also knew that they shouldn't go to the toilet in the villa, including the 2 capybaras that had just arrived. In this regard, Jiang Hai really had nothing to do. In the past, he had to cook 3 meals. Now, he didn't even have to cook 3 meals. In the morning, he casually took a bite. In the afternoon, he also casually took a bite. In the evening, he was waiting for Xiaoya to cook a big meal. So if he wasn't carefree, who else would be? He really had nothing to do, so he just lay there and played games. You're really. If you have nothing to do in the manor, why don't you go and take a look at the town you invested in? Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said to him with an unhappy face. A few days ago, she drove Jiang Hai's F650 to Winthrop. Bernice also learned a lot about Jiang Hai from one of her few good friends, Shendy Clive, such as the past of the 10 girls in his manor, plus Delina and Marion. Also, how did Jiang Hai get to where he is today, and how much money did Jiang Hai invest in the town? Shendy Clive told her all of this, and after listening to her words, Bernice was also a little surprised. She really didn't expect Jiang Hai to have so much money. Jiang Hai's money alone is almost the same as her family's. However, considering that this is the money that Jiang Hai earns in a year, she was a little uneasy. If he earns so much in a year, what about in 10 years? 20 years? She seemed to see that Jiang Hai was about to admit defeat. I don't have the right to supervise, Moses Adams will help me look after it, it will be fine. Jiang Hai waved his hand and said with a smile. Indeed, he didn't understand these things. A layman didn't need to command professionals, he only needed to check the accounts. As for the construction units and the like, Wallace Kirk will naturally keep a close eye on them. After all, this is the business of the town of Winthrop. If there is a problem, then the tourism industry of the town will be finished. The new town can't afford this. This is not a national project. This is their own project. Therefore, he and the residents of the town will deliberately keep a close eye on these people. Not to mention cutting corners, even the slightest mistake is not allowed. Under such circumstances, it is useless for Jiang Hai to go. He might as well use the time to play games on his phone. You are really. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't want to move no matter what, Bernice was speechless. However, she couldn't say anything to Jiang Hai because he really didn't have anything to do. He didn't have anything to do, he was just too idle. Boss, a group of people wants to see you. They said they are here to discuss a business deal. Just as Jiang Hai and Bernice were bickering, Robbins Garcia's voice suddenly came from the walkie-talkie on Jiang Hai's waist. When Jiang Hai heard Robbins Garcia's words, he couldn't help but look at the door in the distance. Jiang Hai's residential area is not very far from the door. Of course, it is difficult for ordinary people to see the situation outside the door with the naked eye, but Jiang Hai can vaguely see. At this time, in his line of sight, he saw 2 cars parked outside the door. Some dressed like hooligans are standing next to the cars, and in the front of the car, there is a middle-aged man in a suit and tie. He seems to be the leader of these people. What's the situation? Jiang Hai glanced at these people. He doesn't seem to know these people, and at a glance, he knows that these people have bad intentions. However, although he doesn't know who these people are, Jiang Hai is a little curious. Why are these people looking for me? So after thinking for a while, he stood up from the recliner and strolled towards the door. Seeing Jiang Hai standing up and walking towards the door, Bernice was also a little curious and followed Jiang Hai. Feeling that Bernice followed him, Jiang Hai didn't care and slowly walked to the door. Seeing Jiang Hai and Bernice coming out, these people subconsciously looked at him. According to the situation they know, Jiang Hai should be the owner here, but they really don't know Bernice. But these little punks, it's fine if they don't know her. Looking at Bernice's home clothes, their wolf-like eyes swept over Bernice's body, and even the people behind them whistled. Looking at these guys, Jiang Hai and Bernice couldn't help but frown. These guys are definitely not good people. I am the owner here, what's the matter? Across the iron door, Jiang Hai looked at these people in front of him and asked reluctantly. We are here to talk to you about cooperation. I don't know if you can let us in. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the middle-aged man in the lead chuckled, and then said politely. Why is it politeness? If it weren't for his, "I'm going to eat you," expression, Jianghu would have really believed it. What do we have to cooperate with? We have nothing to cooperate with, you can go. Shaking his head, Jianghu said very clearly. Does he need to cooperate with others? He doesn't need to. Hey, you dare to refuse us without listening to us, do you want to die? Seeing that Jianghu was about to turn around and leave, a guy with green hair stepped forward and kicked Jianghu's iron door. Then he shouted loudly, "You're not allowed to leave." Oh, are you threatening me? Hearing this guy's words, Jianghu's eyes narrowed and he said to him with a gloomy face. Hey, don't worry, you should listen to our cooperation project first. On behalf of Mr. Billy Wallen, I will invest $3 million in your manor and take 50% of your manor's shares. What do you think? With a wave of his hand, the middle-aged man stopped the little punk next to him from making trouble for Jianghu, and then said to Jianghu. His tone was like Jianghu was taking advantage of him. Hearing his words, Jianghu's disdainful look crawled all over his face. I have a feeling that you are here to die. Get out of here while I'm in a good mood today. How much is Jianghu's manor worth? Not to mention anything else, he spent $280 million just to buy this land, plus the cows, fish, and grapes in his manor. His manor was priced at $5 billion. If he sold it, he would be stupid because it would take him 2 years to earn back $500,000. But now, these guys are saying that they want 50% for $3 million? They must be dreaming. Boy, if you dare to curse again, believe it or not, I will kill you in minutes. Pointing at Jianghu, the hoodlum who spoke just now once again put on a brave front and shouted. He even stretched his hand into Jianghu's manor. Seeing this scene, Jianghu didn't say anything. He directly grabbed the man's arm and pulled it inside. In an instant, the man felt a huge force. With a bang, he smashed into Jianghu's big iron gate. His face was almost flattened, but Jianghu didn't let go. Instead, he continued to exert more force. With 2 popping sounds, the man's arm instantly stretched. This was the reason why Jianghu dislocated his joint. Being dislocated like this, the man couldn't help but scream loudly. Let go. F***CKU. Seeing that Jianghu actually dislocated their companion's arm, the punks behind these people also rushed over. Some of them went directly to the trunk of the car, took out some bats and other weapons, and distributed them to these people. But just as they rushed over, they saw a few horses in the distance. The situation here was told to Jianghu by Robbins. Naturally, Robbins had been paying attention to this place. When he saw that the situation was not good, he immediately found the cowboys who were herding with him and rode over. When they arrived at the scene, they also pulled out their pistols in an instant and pointed at these people with an unfriendly face. Chapter 404. The American government is indeed very protective of private property. If there is no search warrant, the police, FBI, CIA, etc., entering your property is considered trespassing. However, regarding trespassing, the degree of self-defense and counterattack varies from state to state. Of course, it is not like the legends where if someone trespasses, you can shoot the other party. That is impossible. Generally speaking, if you want to shoot an intruder in self-defense, one of the requirements is that the other party must have a weapon that can threaten you. If the intruder is empty-handed and does not constitute a threat, then it is murder if you shoot the intruder. Second, you must get the approval of the local police agency. If you see someone trespassing, you must first call the police station and explain the situation. Also, there must be surveillance cameras in the house. Under such circumstances, you can only shoot when the police ask you to. Otherwise, it is also murder. Third, if you shoot and the first shot hits the other party's arm or leg, causing the other party to lose the power to attack you, you can't shoot again. If you shoot now, it is still murder. Therefore, in the United States, most guns are actually just decorations used to scare people. It is really not easy to shoot, especially for some law-abiding citizens. Guns are really just decorations. But there was no one who was not afraid of death. When Robbins Garcia and the others revealed their guns, the people who were still clamoring instantly lost their voices and took a step back. In the whole scene, only the screams of the man whose arm was dislocated by Jianghu could be heard. For a moment, the whole scene was extremely strange and quiet. "Boss, what's the situation?" Robbins Garcia looked at the people outside and asked with some confusion. "These guys are here to cause trouble." While pulling the man's arm, Jianghu said with a smile. Wow, no need, we are just here to talk business. Didn't you Wuxia people say that even if the deal is not done, there is still benevolence? There is no need to point a gun at us." Hearing the words of Jianghu and Robbins Garcia, the middle-aged lawyer who had already flashed to the back when the conflict broke out came over and said with a strange tone and a serious face. "You want to buy 50% of my manor for 3 million? Heh, who would believe that you're not here to pick a fight?" Looking at the guy in front of him, Jianghu said with disdain. He had thought about it a long time ago. There would definitely be a lot of people eyeing him. However, he had met with some consortiums, families, and the American government. All his arrangements were to deal with these two aspects. As for the American government, he would submit the research report from the Research Institute to them. He could do whatever he wanted. After all, it was impossible for them to take over his territory. As for the tycoons, he had $400 million in oil futures, which was his protective talisman. However, he had never thought that these little cats and dogs from the underworld path would dare to cause trouble for him. These people from the gray path, unless they were desperados who wanted to rely on kidnapping to make a fortune, in the eyes of the rich, these people were dogs. Whether they were wild dogs or domestic dogs, they were all dogs. If they wanted to kill them, they could do so at any time. It was really difficult for people at Jianghu's level to look at these people in the eye. But now, these people dared to cause trouble for him? It's like you were doing well in this area, but you were slapped by a kid when you went out, which made Jianghu very unhappy. Okay, if you don't want to sell, just say that you don't want to sell, you don't have to do this, okay? Listening to Jianghu's unhappy words, the lawyer here also raised his hand. He really came here to negotiate, not to fight. Hey, so I'm sorry. You're really shameless, Robbins Garcia. Call the police, let the police deal with these guys. Listening to this guy's sophistry, Jianghu couldn't help but laugh. He said to Robbins Garcia beside him, and Robbins Garcia immediately picked up his phone to call the police. But before he could press the call, a police car had already driven over in the distance. What a joke, Jianghu is Winthrop's god of wealth. He is now not only the financial guarantee of Winthrop, but he also invested in the establishment of a tourist area. Who is the most important person in Winthrop? In the eyes of most residents, police, and government officials, besides their own families, Jianghu is the most important. Jianghu's manor was the place where all the police focused on and patrolled. Every 2 or 3 minutes, a patrol car would pass by. Now that so many people gathered here, it naturally attracted the attention of these people, so the police came directly with their sirens on. When they saw the police coming, these punks were more or less afraid. How many people in the underworld are not afraid of the police? Maybe the leaders are not afraid, but these underlings are still very afraid of the police. What's the situation? The 2 police officers looked at the punks surrounding Jianghu's manor and avoided the reinforcements for the first time. At the same time, they got out of the car with their guns and shouted at the 2 groups of people who were still confronting each other. "Mr. Police, you came at the right time. Someone committed a crime here. This person tore off our friend's arm. You have to uphold justice for us." As soon as he saw the police coming, the middle-aged lawyer winked at the punks around him and asked them to retreat first. Then he walked in front of the police and began to complain. But unfortunately, these police officers didn't even pay attention to him. Seeing these people retreat, the 2 police officers quickly walked in front of Jianghu and nodded respectfully, then asked Jiang Hai, "Mr. Jiang, what's the situation?" As soon as they heard the police's words, the faces of these punks and lawyers instantly changed. Before they came, they did hear that Jiang Hai's status here was not low, but they really didn't think that the police would dare to do this in front of them. These guys came to cause trouble, and then this guy wanted to come over. I just pulled him back and didn't let him come in. Hearing the police's words, Jiang Hai also let go of the man's hand. As soon as he let go, the man instantly fell to the ground and began to scream. He had no choice but to scream. Jiang Hai not only dislocated the bones in his shoulder, but also the bones in his arm and wrist. Now, his right hand was as soft as a noodle. Oh, I can see that these people don't look like good people. All of you, squat down and hold your heads. We'll talk about it later when you enter the station. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the police officer immediately shouted. Hearing the police's words, the punks and lawyers here were stunned. In the past, they were the most unreasonable people, but they didn't expect that these police officers and Jiang Hai were even worse. "Sir, is it really okay for you to do this? Now that our people are injured, you want us all to squat down?" The middle-aged lawyer looked at the police in front of him and said with a face full of displeasure. "Don't you see that you're calling me a police officer? You have the intention to intrude on other people's private property. No matter what, you deserve it. Also, just now, this guy's hand did enter Mr. Jiang's manor. Don't let Mr. Jiang pull his hand out of kindness and accidentally dislocate his hand. Even if it's chopped off, it's still your responsibility. Do you understand? What did it mean to invert black and white?" Hearing the police officer's words, Jiang Hai suddenly felt like he was the villain. Since when did he have the ability to make the police speak for him? Jiang Hai was really a little confused. In fact, it was inevitable that these police officers would speak for Jiang Hai. This was because in the United States, although the police were part of the government, they weren't civil servants. They were in an employer-employee relationship, just like working for some private companies to earn money. However, the ones who gave them jobs were the local government, and Jiang Hai was the biggest taxpayer in Winthrop. It could be said that the money these police officers received was Jiang Hai's tax money. If Jiang Hai paid more, they would earn more. If Jiang Hai paid less, they would earn less. If Jiang Hai paid a few million, the police department would get more than $1 million, although it was a small amount for Jiang Hai. However, for these police officers, it was a pretty good income. $50,000 a year from a middle-class family. If they made Jiang Hai unhappy and he left for another state or county, they would lose a lot of their income. Moreover, they also heard that Jiang Hai earned more than $1 billion this year. When it was time to pay taxes next year, they would have to pay at least a few $100 million in taxes. Excluding the national taxes, they could earn a lot here. This was especially true for police officers like them. They could earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Therefore, Jiang Hai was their bread and butter. It was not a joke. Now, in the entire police station, Jiang Hai was the only one who didn't worship him. Therefore, not to mention just speaking for Jiang Hai, even if Jiang Hai didn't like someone, they would take the initiative to help Jiang Hai. You are abusing your power. I want to sue you." Hearing this, the middle-aged lawyer's face turned red. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation, so he said loudly to the police officer in front of him. "Do as you wish." The police were used to such words. It seemed that this person was quite angry, but the police couldn't be bothered with him. Just as the gangsters didn't know how to proceed, a series of sirens rang. Several more police cars appeared in front of Jiang Hai's manor. As soon as they heard that the god of fortune was in danger, the speed and efficiency of the police were unprecedentedly high. The gangsters looked at the police officers surrounding them. To be honest, they were a little flustered. Looking at the middle-aged man in front of them, they didn't know what to do. The middle-aged lawyer could only sigh at the current situation. It seemed like the plan had to change. Chapter 405. Sorry to bother you. Walking into Jiang Hai's villa, Wallace Kirk said to Jiang Hai with a smile. It's okay, I'm bothering you. Hearing Wallace Kirk's words, Jiang Hai said with a smile and waved his hand casually. Beer or coffee? Watching the three people in front of him sit down, Jiang Hai also walked to the refrigerator and asked them. Coffee is good. We have something to do when we go back. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the three looked at each other and said. Jiang Hai also took out 3 cans of coffee from the refrigerator and heated them in the machine next to him. Jiang Hai brought them over and then sat down in front of the 3 people. For Jiang Hai, he knew 2 of the 3 people who came here. The old man sitting in the middle is none other than Wallace Kirk, the mayor of Winthrop. Next to Mayor Wallace Kirk, there are 2 men in police uniforms. The man sitting on the left is called Murray Smith. He is also an old man. This man is none other than the current chief of the Winthrop Police Department. Jiang Hai had seen him a long time ago. When he was attacked by a group of delinquents in Winthrop, and when the Winthrop Police Department broke out in a scandal, he came to ask Jiang Hai for help. Finally, it was settled through private negotiations. This man and Jiang Hai are old acquaintances. It is normal for him to come and explain this incident. As for the last person, he looks about 30 years old. It is said that he has just graduated from the police academy, but why is he here? Jiang Hai didn't ask in detail. If this person is not the nephew of Wallace Kirk and Murray Smith, he may be someone with some background, but Jiang Hai doesn't care about this. Jiang Hai is not afraid of anyone. Mr. Jiang, this time, there may be some trouble. Taking a sip of coffee, Wallace Kirk looked at Jiang Hai and hesitated. Now, it is the afternoon when those people came to Jiang Hai's house to make trouble. After the police arrested these people, they managed to get a lot of information out of them. It was because of this that Mayor Wallace Kirk came to Jiang Hai to explain the situation. What? Is the other party very powerful? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai froze for a moment. Are those people more than just delinquents? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Wallace Kirk glanced at Murray Smith and motioned for him to speak. Murray took out a small notebook and began to talk to Jiang Hai. No, they are just some low-level guys. According to them, they are delinquents in the South District of Boston. The boss is called Billy Wallen. This guy actually seems to have a lot to do with you, Mr. Jiang. We called Boston to confirm that he was just a low-level guy. Looking at Jiang Hai, Murray Smith told Jiang Hai who his opponent was this time. According to Murray Smith, this guy named Billy Wallen was just a small lackey. He had a lot to do with Jiang Hai. First, when Jiang Hai was attacked for the first time, there were 2 people in charge. One was Faraday Wilson, and the other was Bunyan Wallen. Bunyan Wallen was Billy Wallen's younger brother, but at that time, he did not have the basic ability to be cocky with Jiang Hai. The second thing was that when Jiang Hai rescued Delina and the others, the men who originally controlled them, the boss above them was Billy Wallen's original boss. Because of Jiang Hai's intervention, not only did they lose a lot of income, but the police in Boston also cracked down on them for a while in order to give an explanation to Jiang Hai. The original boss wanted to escape to Europe at this time, but he was killed as soon as he went to sea. During that period of power vacuum, Billy Wallen used money from who knows where to organize a group of people. The second attack on Jiang Hai, which was the most dangerous one, now seemed to be vaguely pointing to Billy Wallen. But later, after he found that Jiang Hai was not easy to deal with, for some reason, he hid for a while. But no one knew where he got the news from, or what, but he actually wanted to attack Jiang Hai's manor. And this time, although the other party was threatening, they did not invade Jiang Hai's territory, and there was no substantial threat. There was a lawyer in the other party's team, and they did not even say anything racist. Obviously, it was impossible to sue them. The best result was that Jiang Hai beat them up for nothing, and then these people would be released after 48 hours. For this, Murray Smith could only come over and apologize to Jiang Hai. What does that mean? I know that these people want to harm me, but I can't arrest them. Looking at Murray Smith in front of him, Jiang Hai frowned. He was not afraid of thieves stealing, but he was afraid of thieves thinking about him. Now that he was being thought about by others all day, Jianghu was not comfortable. I'm here to tell you that I will strengthen the defense here again. I will patrol your place 24 hours a day, and there are 2 police cars stationed here. This is Doyle George, the main person in charge of the defense here. You can ask him to do anything, and it's best not to leave your place in the next few days. Hearing Jianghu's words, Murray Smith shook his head helplessly. In fact, to be honest, he was not willing to do so. He also wanted to go and arrest them directly. After all, if he curried favor with Jianghu, whether it was for public or private reasons, it would only be beneficial to them. But after all, this was a world where laws were spoken. Although in the United States, the rich were the law, and the police were the best bodyguards for the rich. Just like Jianghu now, having a special police officer to protect him and stand guard for him, this was his privilege. Hearing Murray Smith introduce himself, the seemingly young police officer nodded to Jianghu. Compared to Mayor Wallace Kirk and Murray Smith, who were almost fawning over Jianghu and had an extremely humble attitude, this young man's attitude was much more familiar to Jianghu. He felt that the police in China had this kind of expression when handling cases. Then I'll have to trouble you. Looking at Murray Smith, Jianghu also nodded, indicating that he would have to trouble them. After glancing at Jianghu, Murray Smith thought for a moment and said to Jianghu, by the way, in addition to the police, we don't know how the other party will infiltrate here. If the other party wants to attack by force, it will be troublesome, so if you need, our police station can lend you some equipment. Although guns were not banned in the United States, the only guns that could be bought by civilians were semi-automatic guns, which could not be fired continuously. One bullet at a time. If it was against automatic weapons, the firepower would indeed be somewhat lacking. And to obtain automatic weapons, there were 2 ways. One was to have a special gun license. Like Bell Lester, he had a license to use automatic weapons and sniper rifles, but he was unwilling to kill people. The other way was to hold a license privately, but if you want to buy it, other than the black market and the army, only the police station had it. In order to please Jianghu, Murray Smith was ready to borrow guns. Of course, these guns were registered to the police station near Jianghu's house, but they were given to Jianghu to use. Hearing Murray Smith's words, Jianghu frowned. Indeed, this was Murray Smith's move to please Jianghu, but on the other hand, these people might really attack Jianghu's manor. There are so many desperados in the United States. Hearing his words, Jianghu couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. To be honest, he was very lazy and afraid of trouble. If the United States was always so troublesome, then should he consider changing places? But it was useless to say this now, because the first thing Jianghu had to do now was to guard against possible attacks. The government has always wanted to ban guns over the years, but when the United States was first established, it relied on not banning guns to win the majority of the people's consent from the Europeans. It is not easy to abolish the ban on guns. Hearing Jianghu's words, Mayor Wallace Kirk also sighed. Among all the peaceful countries, the United States had the highest number of shootings every year. Obviously, for any government, guns were not a good thing. Hearing his words, Jianghu also shrugged his shoulders. To be honest, the ban on guns was also a very important point for the United States to attract people to travel and play. For example, in China, there were too few people who had played with guns. This was also one of the main reasons they came here to play. Jianghu immediately called Bell Lester. Compared to raising cattle, Bell Lester was more proficient in this area. When he heard that someone was eyeing Jianghu's manor and might attack, Bell Lester was very excited. Whether it was Mayor Wallace or Director Smith, they all knew what this sunny boy used to do. To be honest, they were quite relieved to have him by Jianghu's side. After briefly explaining the situation here, Bell took stock of the weapons in the manor. It seemed to be the same, but no one would complain about having too little firepower, so it was reasonable to borrow some equipment from the police station. After everyone made the decision, Jianghu drove with Bell to the police station. They were going to look for equipment there. At the same time, Jianghu also called Moses Adams. He still had some things to ask him to do. Since the last time he spent money to solve the problem in Miami, Jianghu felt that rich people should spend money to solve their problems. But it was not convenient for him to do these things, so it was good for Moses Adams to do it. Chapter 406. Wow, you have quite a variety of things here. Following Murray Smith, Jianghu brought Belle to the Winthrop police station. After greeting the local police, they entered the armory. As soon as they walked in, Belle could not help but exclaim softly. Indeed, although the Winthrop police station did not look big, because it was by the sea, it was also considered a border defense. Therefore, the armory of the police station here was the best in terms of quantity and quality among all the armory of the standing police station. Looking around, there were a lot of guns in this room that was about 100 square meters. There were guns hanging on the walls, on the floor, and in some developed partitions that looked like locker rooms. There were also many guns. Basically, there were all kinds of long guns, rifles, and shotguns. These were the most important ones. Among these guns, there was one that Jianghu was very familiar with. He also had an August at home. However, the difference was that the August here was not the kind that could fire a bullet with a pull of the trigger. Instead, it was an automatic gun. If the trigger was not released, it would continuously fire. Other than the August, the most common guns were the M16 and the M4. In fact, in the eyes of some people who did not know much about guns, there was no difference between the M16 and the M4. When Jianghu played Counter-Strike, which was also known as Counter-Strike, he often called the .43 used by the police an M16, but it was actually an M4. Those who really knew guns understood that there was a big difference between these two guns. The M16 was an automatic rifle, while the M4 was a carbine. Carbines were also in the category of rifles. However, because the barrel was short, the shooting accuracy was high, and the gun itself was light, so it was considered a strategic weapon. Those who read military literature often knew that in a war, an area of effect attack was required. Rifles were specifically aimed at enemies within 100 to 300 meters. Beyond 300 meters, machine guns were used to suppress enemies. Within 50 meters, it was the territory of submachine guns. Between 50 and 100 meters, there was a vacuum period. The existence of the carbine was to make up for this vacuum period. Logically speaking, an M4 would be sufficient for a police gun. The M16 was not originally intended for police stations. This type of rifle was exclusively used by the military. However, after the 9/11 incident in the United States, the M16 was widely promoted to police stations. However, they were a few generations younger than the military. For example, the military was currently using M16A4S, while there were only M16A1S and A2S here. In addition, there were long guns and shotguns. There were two types of shotguns. One was brown and ordinary, and the other was green. The green ones were anti-riot. They used number 12 beanbag bullets. They didn't have much penetrating power, but they were quite painful. One shot wouldn't turn you into a sieve, but it would break your bones in an instant. It was similar to the rubber bullets used in the earliest escort vehicles in China. In addition to these more common guns, there were many special weapons. There weren't many of these weapons, but there were many of them. For example, there were various sniper rifles. Although there were only one or two of each model, they were enough to be used. For example, there were Matley M109, SVD, AW50, AS50, M24, and so on. There were also many rifles, such as the beautiful XM8, Scar, and so on. However, these weren't what Jianghu and Belle wanted. Although they wanted to take a few guns back, these guns were only borrowed by Jianghu. After this incident, they would have to be returned. Moreover, these guns and bullets were all labeled. If Jianghu played around with them, there would be trouble. Moreover, borrowing guns from the Winthrop Police Department was also risky. It was better to borrow as little as possible. After looking around, Jianghu and Belle discussed for a while and decided to borrow 3 guns. In the manor, other than Dulles Gerard and Connor Murphy, the other men had guns. Although they only had handguns and shotguns, their defense was enough. However, their defense was more or less sufficient. What they lacked now was long-range firepower. Belle already had a sniper rifle, and that was enough. However, the suppressive firepower was not enough. Therefore, out of the 3 guns, they chose a submachine gun. This was the best weapon for close combat within 50 meters. This gun was the MP5, which was known as the king of submachine guns. Of course, it was not the original version. It had been modified a long time ago. It was now called the MP5K. There was no stock, so the weight was reduced, but the speed was increased, and the combat effectiveness was improved again. In addition to this gun, Belle also chose an MG36. This gun was actually not very popular with gun enthusiasts because this gun was an evolved version of the MG36. It fired 5.56 NATO bullets, which were not very powerful. This gun was not a real machine gun, nor a light machine gun. At most, it was a piece of equipment to supplement continuous firepower. However, in the eyes of professionals, this gun was quite good. It was light and accurate. Although the shooting speed was a little slow, as long as it was not a real war between big countries, it would be a good weapon. Whether it was used for anti-terrorism or suppression, it was a good choice. There were many people in the Delta who used it. After choosing these 2 guns, Murray Smith also gave Belle 3 basic sets of bullets. Now, there was only 1 gun left. In fact, according to Belle, these 2 guns were enough. However, considering that Jianghu had not played with them yet, he decided to let Jianghu look at them again. This was one of the ways to please the boss. Can I take this gun? Looking at the guns here, Jianghu was honestly very interested. But to choose one of these guns, he was a little hesitant. Just as he did not know how to choose, he suddenly found a big guy in a corner. This guy was really quite big and thick. Especially the gun with several barrels tied together. Jianghu suddenly had a feeling that he liked it very much. This gun was similar to the revolving machine gun used by the Terminators in the Terminator movies. It looked really fierce. This is fine, but where do you put it? Put it on the roof? Hearing Jianghu's words, Murray Smith hesitated and asked Jianghu because he really did not think that Jianghu would use this gun. In fact, it was just that he did not think about it. Since this gun was sent to the police station, they have not used it. This gun was called a Gatling M134. It was a rapid-fire machine gun, but it was basically fixed. 7.62mm bullets were definitely a huge killing machine now. Generally speaking, this kind of gun was installed on planes and ships. In the Army's battle, the number of times it was used was not too many because this gun could penetrate any steel pipe or reinforced concrete building within a range of 100 meters. Such a killing machine was really easy to accidentally injure. The firing rate of each of the 6 barrels was about 950 rounds. In theory, the firing rate could reach 6,000 rounds per minute. So after this thing was sent here, it has been many years, maybe more than 10 years, since then, no one has used this thing except for Li Xing's protection. Now that Jianghu asked, Maris Smith subconsciously answered. Then I'll take this. Why put it on the roof? I can hold it myself. Thinking about holding this thing in his hands, Jianghu was really a little excited. He walked over and used his right arm, and in an instant, this big thing was lifted up by Jianghu. This gun did not include the ammunition feeder and motor, and its empty weight was 15.9 kilograms. With these 2 things installed, it weighed 26 kilograms. That was 26 kilograms, not 26 kilograms. It was the weight of a bag of rice, and there was a lot of recoil when it was fired. Now that they heard Jianghu's words, Maris Smith and Belle both smiled. That, boss, you are strong, but to hold this thing and fire directly. This is reality, after all, not a movie. Looking at Jianghu, Bell Lester said a little awkwardly. He had been in the Delta for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who could hold such a heavy machine gun and fire directly. Why don't we try it? Hearing Bell's words, Jianghu also smiled, and then walked into the shooting range behind the police station. When they walked in, there were many new police officers practicing in the shooting range. In the United States, there were almost no police schools. More than 90% of the policemen were recruited by the government. Most of these people were veterans or ordinary people with no criminal records. Winthrop was a big tourist attraction, and there were many tourists, so naturally, they needed more policemen. Therefore, during the construction of the town, they also expanded the police force. The police in the town now were not like before, where there were only 20 people. Now, there were more than 50 police officers in the town, but the remaining 30 or so were all new and still needed to practice. Seeing Jianghu walk over, most of the policemen here actually knew him. After all, he was the richest man in Winthrop. Even if they had just arrived, they were assigned to patrol around Jianghu's manor. At first, they were a little unhappy. But when their weekly salary came, their dissatisfaction disappeared. This was their god of wealth, and they had to protect it. Now that they saw Jianghu walk over with an M134, they all looked at him curiously. Jianghu and the others were not careless. They walked to an empty target, and Jianghu waved to the side. The staff in charge of the shooting range in the police station came up and installed the motor and ammunition feeder for Jianghu. Of course, there were also 100 bullets in it. This was also the standard configuration of this kind of gun. If the force was strong enough, it could be dragged on the ground like a chain of bullets and no one would care. Looking at the gun in front of him, it was ready. Jianghu could not help but take a deep breath and take a lunge to offset the recoil. At the same time, he stared at the paper figurine in front of him. His hand was on the trigger, and as he pulled it gently, a series of sounds spread throughout the shooting range. Chapter 407. Pa. With a crisp sound, in a room in the south of Boston, Billy Wallen, with a gloomy face, threw the glass of vodka in his hand heavily on the floor. The broken glass instantly exploded in all directions, but none of the people standing in the room avoided it. They all lowered their heads and stood there without looking sideways. This guy is digging his own grave. I kindly extended my little finger to him, but he didn't hold it tightly. Instead, he dared to grab my people. He must be tired of living, Billy Wallen said with a gloomy face as he narrowed his eyes. Yesterday, after he heard that Jianghu was making money, he was tempted. In fact, if it was some large consortium or plutocrat making money, people like him would not dare to show off. In fact, half a year ago, he would not have dared to show off to Jianghu either. However, his development in the past 6 months had made him a little arrogant. In South Boston, he had always regarded himself as the overlord of the underworld. Jianghu did not give him any face this time. This was hard for him, who had recently become arrogant, to accept. In his opinion, Jianghu was just a rich man from the countryside. What could he do with money? He had more than 1,000 men and hundreds of guns. Not to mention rebelling here, it was not a problem for him to make trouble for Jianghu. Originally, in his opinion, giving Jianghu $3 million was already too much, but Jianghu did not give him any face at all. This made him want to kill him because Jianghu's manner was really a delicious piece of fat meat for him. Jianghu caused the death of his former boss. He did not care because if his former boss did not die, he would not have been able to sit in this position. Jianghu caused his brother to go to prison. He also did not care. In their line of work, even if they died, they could not blame anyone. However, Jianghu was guarding a large pile of wealth and was not willing to let him touch it. This made him very unhappy. "You guys go and teach him a lesson," Billy Wallen said with hatred as he sat gloomily on the chair. Although he couldn't wait to shoot Jianghu to death and then take over his manor, he knew that it was impossible. If he showed up, even if Jianghu died, he would have to run away. A billionaire was killed in his own home. If the American authorities didn't kill him, how would they explain it to their citizens? Therefore, he wasn't too stupid and knew to let his underling go. The people around him were all outlaws. Their job was to lick the blood on the blade. After hearing Billy Wallen's words, they lowered their heads and walked out of the room one by one. That night, phone calls were made from these people's phones. Although Billy Wallen claimed to have thousands of subordinates, most of them were just ordinary gangsters. If you asked these hooligans to sell flour, guard a place, or guard a gate, they wouldn't care. However, if you asked them to fight, they would have to think twice. If they had to use guns to fight, then half of them would probably run away. If they had to attack a billionaire's manor with guns, then they wouldn't go no matter what. It was precisely because of this that these people found some people who were loyal. However, because the relationship between the police and Jianghu was very good, these underlings who couldn't fight had other uses, which was to block the road. Jianghu's manor was located in the middle of Winthrop and Boston. There was only a two-way four-lane road there. As long as the road was blocked, it would be impossible for the Winthrop police and Boston police to come. However, these underlings still dared to block the road. As the phone calls were made, more and more people gathered in the Boston area. As soon as the people gathered, the Boston police, who had been watching these people, immediately sent news. After receiving the news, the Winthrop police chief, Murray Smith, also immediately sent a message to Jianghu. At this time, Jianghu was at home discussing with Moses Adams how to deal with Billy Wallen. In Jianghu's view, the best way to deal with Billy Wallen was naturally to spend money to get rid of him, just like in Miami. However, after asking the local tyrant, Moses Adams, Jianghu knew that this might not be very reliable. This was because Boston had originally been the domain of the Gray Gang since ancient times. After the American government regained control of Boston, the impact of Boston's management was huge. It was a huge blow to Boston. Before Billy Wallen, Boston didn't even have a Gray Gang with more than 100 members. Of course, this was referring to the subordinates, not the businesses they controlled. After all, their businesses still needed ordinary people to run, such as waiters and doormen. These were not considered their staff. The main reason why Billy Wallen could expand so quickly was that he had the financial support of some people in Wuxia. The United States was a capitalist country, and money meant everything. Even if they knew that the other party was the Gray Gang, as long as the money was in place, the police wouldn't dare to make a move without enough evidence. Of course, this was also because the other party had been established for too short a time, and too much evidence had not been formed yet. If they stayed for another 1 or 2 years, the evidence would be conclusive, and the Gray Gang would not be far from destruction. Boston was one of the key cities of the Federation. It was precisely because of this that there were not enough forces to accept Jianghu's business. Rewards could be offered in Miami, but not in Boston. Just as Jianghu was having a headache about how to deal with these guys, Murray Smith called. "It seems that you may not be able to go back today." Hanging up the phone, Jianghu looked at Moses Adams and shrugged. "Oh, it's really exciting to work with a boss like you, but I believe that you will protect me, right?" Looking at Jianghu's expression, and the fact that Jianghu did not deliberately avoid the sound of the phone call, Moses Adams himself heard some of the sound. He knew that the guy called Billy Wallen was about to make a move. "Get ready, the other party may be here soon." Jianghu looked at Moses Adams, picked up the walkie-talkie beside him, and spoke to everyone in the manor. Hearing Jianghu's words, the people in the manor moved. Although it was because of Jianghu that they were put in danger, these people didn't care very much. Because they knew that this matter had nothing to do with Jianghu. Jianghu was not a person who took the initiative to provoke trouble, but because some people were eyeing Jianghu's manor. Although Jianghu's men were the first to come here, they had only been with him for 8 months. But they did not panic or complain at this time. When Jianghu came back from the police station, he had already told them that the manor was in trouble now. Those who wanted to leave, Jianghu would not let them stay, but those who stayed had to protect the manor. Americans were quite desperate to protect their private property. No one left on the spot, and they made their own plans. As Jiang Hai's voice fell, the people in the villa area moved. Bell, Harriman Fells, Burke Dollar, and Robbins Garcia all gathered in front of Jiang Hai's villa for the first time. In front of Jiang Hai's villa, they had modified the car that was originally parked there to form a protective wall. They would resist the enemy here, while Bell went to the roof. This was where he should be as a sniper. At this time, Jiang Hai was also sitting in front of his villa. Beside him was the M134 he borrowed, as well as a box of 2,000 bullets. He believed that these things would leave a deep impression on those people. Philip Turner's family, Tommy Charles's family, Eleanor Cece's family, Edward Anderson's family, Cyrus Gerard, and Connor Murphy gathered in Edward Anderson's villa, forming another crossfire site. Of course, Marin Rupert went to the hangar. If there was any trouble, he would send these people away by plane. In addition, helicopters could also be used for fighting. Finally, after receiving the news, Aphrodite and the others immediately came to Jiang Hai's villa. Even if they wanted to leave now, they had nowhere to go. When these people arrived in front of Jiang Hai's villa, 8 police cars drove over in the distance. In each of the 8 police cars, there were 4 policemen. These police cars formed the first protective wall outside the gate of Jiang Hai's villa. Jiang Hai, Robbins Garcia, and the others were lying in ambush in front of the villa. They formed the second layer of protection. If these 2 layers of protection were broken, it meant that God wanted Jiang Hai to die. When the time came, he would take everyone to the airport. If the villa was hit by a disaster, they could still rebuild it. If someone died, even if only one died, Jiang Hai would be sad for the rest of his life. This was also the escape route that they had discussed long ago. All the preparations continued. Everyone was smoking in boredom, enjoying the calm before the storm. Jiang Hai also smoked for the first time today. Jiang Hai was not a good kid. When he was in junior high, he was the most rebellious and curious, so he learned to smoke with his classmates. However, because of the winter in Bing City, smoking was too uncomfortable. In his second year of high school, he used his willpower to quit. Later, when he went to work, he also did not have any pressure and did not pick up cigarettes. Later, when his parents got into an accident, although it was resolved because of Chi Li, he did not smoke again. At this time, he really felt some pressure. The dozens of people in the villa were under his control. However, after smoking a few cigarettes, Jiang Hai could not help but frown. To be honest, he was still not used to smoking. But even if it was just a pipe, it was fine. He was also killing time. Xiao Bai, Xiao Huang, and Dai Fong were beside him. Because Qiuqiu could not fly and could not be used as a scout, it was left in the villa. These 3 guys seemed to have felt the calm before the big battle. They were all lying there, and the atmosphere was quite tense. Chapter 408. Mr. Jiang Hai, the latest news says that they have left Boston. It's about half an hour's drive away from here. If you leave now, it's still not too late. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, a policeman walked into Jiang Hai's manor. Looking at this policeman, not only Jiang Hai, but even Robbins and the others smiled disdainfully. Hide. They really don't know how to do that. Is this your idea, or Murray Smith's? But Jiang Hai raised his head with a cigarette in his mouth, looked at the policeman in front of him, and said indifferently. Jiang Hai naturally knew this policeman. During the day, he came with Murray Smith and Wallace Mayer. His name is Doyle George. Jiang Hai didn't know what he did, but he knew that this guy's family was not ordinary, otherwise, it would be impossible to ask him, a newcomer, to be in charge of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai was born to be poor, so he didn't have a good impression of some of the second generation. Even if he was rich now, he still didn't have a good impression of the second generation. Whether it was the second generation of an official or a rich second generation, as long as it was the second or third generation, Jiang Hai wouldn't be happy. So when he heard his words, Jiang Hai's words were still a bit harsh. Naturally, it's my idea. But when he heard Jiang Hai's words, the man didn't care, but continued. Then we'll wait until you hear from Maris Smith. We won't leave until we see him. Jiang Hai fiercely took a puff of the cigarette in his mouth. He blew out a smoke ring and said indifferently. Is money really so important? More important than life? Looking at Jiang Hai, the policeman thought that Jiang Hai didn't want to leave because he didn't want to leave his manor. Indeed, if Jiang Hai left and these people entered Jiang Hai's manor, it would really cause a lot of losses, but compared to life, no matter how much money was, it was not as important as life in his eyes. Life is naturally important, money is also important. Do you know how much my manor is worth? Now, not to mention other things, just the land and cattle are worth $5 billion. Otherwise, why do you think Wallace and Murray sent so many people here? Don't be kidding. Okay, little policeman, you just do your job. If you can't resist in a while, you can retreat first. We have a plane, and it's fast if we want to leave. Jiang Hai threw the cigarette butt in his mouth to the ground and stamped it out, then he looked at the policeman in front of him with a serious face. This little policeman only knew that Jiang Hai's manor was worth some money, but he really didn't know how much it was worth. It was like a child in the city in China, it was difficult to know how much a developed mountain in the countryside was worth. In their eyes, how much could a wild mountain be worth? But they didn't know that a mountain with development value would be worth at least $100 million. Jiang Hai's manor was definitely worth much more than a small hill in China. Jiang Hai couldn't just give up like this. We won't retreat because our orders are to guard here. Since you already have a backup plan and don't want to leave, then so be it. Hearing that Jiang Hai's manor was worth so much money, the policeman didn't say anything else. Although the world was shouting that life was priceless, how much was a human life really worth? In China, if someone was hit by a car and died in an accident, the compensation would basically be $200,000 or $300,000, which was already not bad. If someone died in a medical accident during treatment in the hospital, the compensation would only be tens of thousands, or even nothing. If there was a conflict and someone accidentally killed someone, the compensation would be even less because they would be sentenced. So, how much was a civilian's life worth? It was definitely not worth $5 billion, so Jiang Hai wanted to protect this place. He didn't say anything, turned around and left Jiang Hai's side, went outside, and prepared to set up a defense. This kid is a bit interesting. Looking at the man's back as he left, Jiang Hai lit up a cigarette and started smoking. The only gun they borrowed today was the M134 in Jiang Hai's hand. They didn't borrow any other guns because Robbins and the others didn't know how to use them. Just as Jiang Hai was talking to this guy, a convoy of about 30 cars had already set off from Boston. These people weren't stupid. They knew that if they rushed over so blatantly, they would probably be stopped before they could get there. As soon as they left Boston, the police would definitely stop them. So, when they were in Boston, only 5 cars came out. The rest of the cars went out in batches at different times and times. After they passed the airport, they were reunited. At this time, the police found out that the other party didn't just send 5 cars, but a total of 30. There were all kinds of cars in the 30 cars. Most of them were sedans, but there were also many vans and commercial vehicles. According to the news from Boston, most of these cars were full of people. There were almost 200 people in 30 cars. When this number was reported, it really scared a lot of people. Winthrop and Boston sent reinforcements to Jiang Hai's manor almost at the same time, but unfortunately, these people were really bad. On the way, many cars broke down on the road. Needless to say, their purpose was to stop the police cars. After all, there was no direct evidence that these people were related to Billy Wallen's gang. Although this could not stop the police for too long, even if it was only for half an hour, everything was unknown. After receiving the news, Jiang Hai's face also changed. He originally thought that the other party would only send 30 or 50 people, but he did not expect that there would be hundreds of people. This time, it was really troublesome. Outside, Doyle George's face was also very ugly. After all, they were the first line of defense. If they were finished, everything would be over. At this moment, he repositioned the car to prevent the other party from increasing their line of attack while reducing their line of attack. At the same time, Winthrop immediately sent police cars, but to their surprise, the driveway from Winthrop to Jianghai's manor was also blocked. It seemed that this Billy Wallen was not an idiot. He had already calculated everything. This time, although the conflict had not yet started, it was already a big event. The authorities of Boston and the county of Winthrop immediately sent messages to the government of Massachusetts and the federal authorities of the United States. But distant water could not quench a nearby fire. Everything was moving in a bad direction. Mr. Jiang, now is your last chance. You can still leave by helicopter. Just as the bad news came one after another, Doyle George's voice came from Jianghai's walkie-talkie. He was still persuading Jianghai to leave. Thank you, but I'm still going to fight. Listening to Doyle George's words, Jianghai frowned. The battle began. Not long after Jianghai's voice fell, the sound of brakes could be heard in the distance. Then, a motorcade consisting mainly of vans and commercial vehicles rushed towards Jianghai's manor like a gust of wind. The motorcade in front, listen, stop immediately for inspection. Otherwise, we will shoot. Looking at the cars rushing over, they would definitely not shoot first. Doyle George shouted loudly into the walkie-talkie. Unfortunately, these cars didn't care about the police. When they accelerated instead of slowing down, they stepped on the accelerator and crashed into the first defensive wall formed by the 8 police cars in front of them. A loud bang was heard. The cars in front crashed directly into the police cars. The impact of the collision not only shocked the people in the cars, but also shocked the people in the cars. Even the police hiding behind the cars were shaken. At this time, a few cars directly jumped over the police cars and wanted to hit the gate. Seeing this, Doyle George did not hesitate. Since the other party crashed into the police cars, even if they did not shoot, it was a declaration of war. He immediately ordered, "Fire." Then, the police who were still conscious immediately took out the weapons in their hands and shot at the cars in front of them. But at this time, the vans that were originally blocking them also opened, and a group of people ran out. They quickly retreated to the back of the cars and began to take the initiative to attack the police. People were threatening. Between a close attack and a car far away, people would subconsciously choose to attack closer, so many police officers turned their muzzles at once. And this was what these people hoped for. Billy Wallen did have hundreds of guns, but these guns were all small pistols and non-automatic weapons. Fighting with the police was courting death. There was a huge gap in firepower. He did not want to provoke the police, so his main purpose now was to attract the police. The key first target was Jianghai. 2 of the cars were forced to stop as the police were distracted by the commotion. But there were still 5 cars that directly crashed through the protective fence outside Jianghai's gate and went straight into Jianghai's manor. Looking at the 5 cars rushing over, Jianghai asked on the other side of the walkie-talkie, "Can I fire?" "Of course." Doyle George on the other side said to Jianghai while attacking these cars and people. The moment his voice fell, Jianghai had already stood up from the ground. At the same time, he raised his little cutie, the borrowed M134. Looking at the 5 cars rushing over in front of him, Jianghai aimed a little and then pressed the button to fire. The first person who wanted to turn was shot by the monster in Jianghai's hand before he could move. The bullet pierced through the windshield of the car. His body tilted and fell on the steering wheel. Then, the car he controlled went off course. The car turned and hit another car. The 2 cars, one on the left and one on the right, directly flipped over on Jianghai's lawn. Chapter 409. Pai Pai. Two commercial vehicles flipped over on the lawn and came to a stop. Of the two drivers in the vehicles, one was dead and the other was injured. As for the others, Jianghu did not know, but he could guess that these people were no longer a threat to Jianghu for the time being. Then, Jianghu looked at the other three vehicles. However, those three vehicles had already crossed over when Jianghu had taken care of the two vehicles. What a joke! Who would dare to drive a private vehicle into a place guarded by machine guns? Oh no, heavy machine guns. That person must have had enough of living. Although these people were fugitives, they still wanted to live when they could. After the vehicles stopped, the people in the three vehicles immediately climbed out and hid on the other side of the vehicles to avoid the bullets. Jianghu's machine gun also swept over the vehicles. The glass of these vehicles was all gone. Feeling the glass shards falling like rain above their heads, these people were a little confused. Are you kidding me? What kind of firepower is this? Is this bullshit? The person in charge of the attack with a small pistol in his hand, a guy with a pointy mouth and monkey cheeks, said with a look of disbelief. He felt as if he was in Africa. Perhaps even Africa was not as chaotic as this. And just as he was muttering there, Jianghu also finished his bullets. He had no choice but to retreat and reload. Feeling that the firepower outside had stopped, these people also heaved a sigh of relief. These cars were all standard commercial vehicles with 8 seats. Each car had 8 people in it, which was a total of 40 people. 2 of the vehicles had flipped over, and now there were only 24 people left. These 24 people were not to be trifled with. As soon as they saw that the firepower outside had stopped, they immediately wanted to rush out. They were now about 200 meters away from Jianghu's villa. If they were to shoot with pistols at this distance, they would really be shooting handguns. Who knew where they would fly to? The pistol only had an attack range of 50 meters, while Jianghu's M134 had an attack range of 300 to 2,500 meters. Therefore, if they wanted to destroy Jianghu, the first thing they had to do was to shorten the distance. In fact, if they drove, they would be able to cover 200 meters in a flash. However, the problem now was that they didn't dare to drive, so they could only run. However, this was the end of this bold person's life. The moment his head popped out, there was a loud bang. The guy's head exploded like a ripe watermelon hit by a baseball bat. Needless to say, the only person with such firepower was Biyao. Wow, 10 points. Not bad. Although he had turned over a new leaf, Biyao used to be a butcher whose hands were stained with blood. When he killed people, he didn't feel guilty or anything. In the past, he killed people for missions and for the country, so he might feel that it was unreal. But now, he killed people for the manor. He liked this job very much. He liked Jianghu. He liked this job. Of course, he liked the bonus that Jianghu gave him the most. In the whole of America, no, in the whole world, which cowboy could earn tens of thousands of dollars a year? Was there any cowboy who could give out $200,000 in a single bonus? He had killed so many people in the Triangle State for so many years, but he had only earned a few $1,000s as a reward. However, with Jianghu, he could get everything back. Most importantly, he could do what he liked the most. To him, this place was like heaven. There's a sniper too. Damn, which army is this? Looking at the headless bodies around them, these people were a little dumbfounded. How could they play like this? There was a heavy machine gun and a sniper. How could they have fun like this? At that moment, Jianghu reloaded his gun and used the suppressive fire. He already liked this kind of violent aesthetic feeling. While he was displaying his powerful firepower, on the other side of the 2 overturned cars, a door was slowly opened. Some people who had been hit by the cars crawled out. After taking a few deep breaths, they crawled towards Jianghu from the grass. At the same time, they counted. In the 2 cars that Jianghu had overturned, there were a total of 16 people. But now, only 12 people had crawled out. The drivers of the 2 cars were dead. One was killed by Jianghu's machine gun, and the other was killed by the glass that popped out after the car overturned. The glass shards pierced into the arteries. If they called an ambulance now, they might be saved. However, the problem was that they couldn't call an ambulance now, so they could only wait for death. As for the remaining 2 people, they were behind the driver of the first car. Not only could the glass of the business car not block bullets, but even the seats and the human body could not block them. Jianghu's bullets pierced through 3 people before they died. Although 4 people died, now was not the time to be sad. Their mission was not completed yet. As soon as they moved, Goldie and Xiaobai had already reacted. They stood up quietly and slipped into the darkness. Not long after, they had quietly rushed towards the people over there. These people originally thought that Jianghu's attention on the main battlefield had been attracted by the people in the other 3 cars. They didn't expect that 2 monsters had already entered their hunting ground. The distance between them was slowly shrinking as they hid. 200 meters, 190 meters, 180 meters. When they were 150 meters away, 2 black shadows flashed in the darkness. The 2 people in front didn't even have time to call for help before they were pushed down. The moment they were pushed down, Goldie and Xiaohei's teeth had already bitten the throats of the 2 people. Someone had done a test before. The bite force of crocodiles was ranked in the top 3 in the world. It was the Gulf crocodile, the Nile crocodile, and the alligator. The 4th was the spotted hunting dog with a bite force of 585 kilograms. Jianghu's Goldie and Xiaobai were not hunting dogs. However, after such a long time, with the nourishment of Jianghu's spirit energy, it was not impossible for these 2 guys to dominate the grassland in Africa, let alone hunting dogs. In an instant, a few bloody holes appeared in the throats of these 2 people. They unwillingly spat out blood and fell into a pool of blood. The situation of these 2 people attracted the attention of the people behind them. "Ah, there's something in the bushes." Seeing that 2 people had died, the 3rd person immediately shouted. Then, he immediately took out his gun and prepared to shoot. However, Goldie and Xiaobai instantly burrowed into the bushes. They were not stupid now. Their goal was to take a bite and leave. This noise also attracted the attention of Jianghu and the others. Immediately, Robbins Garcia and the others aimed the weapons in their hands at this side. Without saying a word, they pulled the triggers. Although they were using shotguns, the effective range of their shots was about the same as a handgun. Now that they were so far away, it was not wrong to say that they were shooting randomly. However, on the battlefield, the bullets that were aimed were sometimes not too fatal. Some random stray bullets were the most fatal. Therefore, these people immediately lay down when they heard the gunshots. However, this gave Xiaobai and Goldie another opportunity. Without saying a word, they circled behind these people. The 2 dogs attacked again and bit the throats of the last 2 people. In the blink of an eye, these 2 guys had killed 4 people. Jianghu had only killed 4 people up until now, while Biyao had only killed 1. This was a remarkable result. Charge, or we're dead meat. Sensing that 2 more lives were slowly fading away, the second in command whispered to the person in charge. The person in charge thought about it and agreed. If they did not leave now, they would all die. Bend over and charge. When he thought of this, the person in charge gave the order. The people around him quickly bent over and rushed towards Jianghu. Once they moved, Xiaobai and Goldie would not be able to make a move. However, the commotion still attracted Jianghu and Biyao's attention. Jianghu still had to suppress the people in front, but Biyao was much more relaxed. He immediately adjusted his aim and looked at the people aiming at their waists. They were really good people. With a crisp sound, the leader fell into a pool of blood. There was a wrist-sized hole in his chest. When they saw this, the remaining 9 people could not help but quicken their pace. If they did not charge, they were dead meat. A distance of 100 meters, if they ran normally, would only take 11 or 12 seconds. If they could run within 10 seconds, they would be qualified to participate in the Olympics. When they bent over, the time increased to 15 or 16 seconds. This also gave Biyao a lot of opportunities. When he pulled the leash, aimed, and fired, Biyao's attack was smooth. When these people were 50 meters away, where their pistols could be used, there were only 3 people left. When these 3 people came out of the bushes, Luo Binsi and the others aimed their weapons at them. Bang, 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 bang. Continuous gunshots rang out. These people helplessly fell into a pool of blood. They never thought that Jianghu would have so many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Not only did he have a heavy machine gun, but he also had a sniper. Not to mention these stragglers. Even if the real police came, it would be a fool's dream to take down this manor without using heavy weapons. Bastard, Henry, and the others have been wiped out. The scene of the last 3 people falling down was clearly seen by the person who had been hiding behind the car. This person couldn't help but hit the car board. He was really a little confused. 2/5 of their strength was lost here just like that. Most importantly, according to the current situation, it was very likely that the remaining 3/5 of their strength would be very difficult to escape. Now, they were really in a dilemma. There was a heavy machine gun and a sniper rifle. If they retreated, it was still the heavy machine gun and the sniper rifle. What should they do? Chapter 4:10. What should we do? What should we do? Feeling the bullets flying over their heads, the remaining 23 people looked anxiously at their leader and asked loudly. Now they couldn't advance or retreat. The other side could hit them, but they couldn't hit the other side. If they continued like this, then the police would come. At that time, the people on their side would really die. Intending to use force to destroy private property, murder charges could be said to be set on the board. Thinking of Jianghu's financial resources, if they went in, they would probably never be able to get out. As mentioned before, although these people were desperados, they didn't really want to die. In such a situation, they were really helpless. Hearing his words, the person who was asked had faint sweat on his forehead. He glanced at his watch and took a long breath. Hold on a little longer, hold on for 10 more minutes. After saying this to the person next to him, the man said with a cold face. On the other side, Jianghu had finished the second bullet belt at this time. He couldn't help but start to load the third bullet belt. In the movies, it's said that a casual shot can make a car explode. I've already loaded so many bullets, the car won't explode. While loading the bullets, Jianghu said helplessly. Indeed, whether it was a movie or a TV series, the car would explode with a gunshot, but Jianghu has now asked for 200 bullets. Not to mention the car, there wasn't even a flame. In fact, a long time ago, someone had already done an experiment. Almost 99% of the bullets hitting a car wouldn't explode. In order to make a car explode, a total of 3 conditions must be met. First, the bullets must be shot into the fuel tank. Second, the bullets must rub against each other and cause an open flame. Third, the bullets must explode. Facts proved that it was not easy to meet these 3 conditions. The cars these people drove were all GMC business cars. This kind of car was also used as a police car in the police station. Its protective ability was quite good, especially the outside tendons. Although Jianghu's machine gun could penetrate the outermost tendon, it couldn't penetrate the inside. It was really not an easy thing to shoot into the fuel tank. Secondly, igniting an open flame was also very difficult. When the bullet was shot at high speed, it would not ignite an open flame when it pierced into metal. This included the walls of the fuel tank. If an experiment was done, it would be discovered that the bullets could penetrate the fuel tank and let the oil flow out. However, it was almost impossible to ignite an open flame. The only way was to use 2 bullets in one hole and let the bullets collide with each other inside the fuel tank. However, Jianghu was not using a sniper rifle. How could he get an open flame so easily? Thirdly, even if there was an open flame, it was basically impossible for it to explode. It was possible for it to burn, but explode? Hee hee. Therefore, Jiang Hai didn't want to blow up the car. It wasn't realistic. After sitting down and reloading, Jiang Hai picked up the gun again. But this time, he didn't rush to shoot. There was no point in shooting at this time. The other party was hiding too well. They didn't shoot now because they were waiting for them to come out. They would kill them when they came out. However, the other party was no fool. Why would he come out at this time? Was he courting death? Moreover, Jiang Hai had run out of bullets. There was still a sniper in the car, okay? Compared to Jiang Hai, the sniper was more dangerous. The scene was in a deadlock for a while. Only the police outside and the gangsters were still fighting fiercely. As time passed by, Jiang Hai and the others relaxed. This was because they got the latest news that the police in Boston had broken through the roadblock. They would arrive in about half an hour. As long as they could hold on for half an hour, these people would die. Bang! Just as Jiang Hai and the others were preparing to go all out to deal with this half an hour, suddenly, a gunshot came from the villa. As soon as he heard this gunshot, Jiang Hai's heart thumped. He cursed in his heart. He immediately turned his head. Sure enough, the window of his room had been broken by a gunshot, and his room was where Daliana and the others were hiding. As for the other party, when they heard this gunshot, they couldn't help but laugh proudly. They knew that they had succeeded. Bell! Jiang Hai shouted and was ready to go back to the villa, but unfortunately, these people outside did not give him such an opportunity. Just as Jiang Hai was about to leave, these 23 people directly rushed out and rushed toward Jiang Hai's villa. Boss, I'll go. After immediately shooting 2 people, Bell put away his weapon and shouted at Jiang Hai below. Compared to suppressive fire, his sniper rifle was not as good as Jiang Hai's M134. Hearing his words, although Jiang Hai was anxious, he still decided to fight head-on. If both sides were not pleasing, then it would be really troublesome. In a flash, he left the hiding place. Jiang Hai also swept toward these people in front of him. In an instant, among the 21 people who were still alive, 6 of them were swept down by Jiang Hai and fell in a pool of blood forever. However, the remaining 15 people's reactions were not slow. They immediately lay down and continued to move toward Jiang Hai. If there was a sniper rifle now, then they would all be targets, but the problem now was that there was no sniper rifle. Daimu, damn English. Looking at the situation of these guys, he was still worried about Jiang Hai in the villa. He decided to change his strategy. Picking up his August, Jiang Hai jumped to the range shield on the first floor and began to pull the trigger. But the problem was that his August could indeed see the other party, but it was a semi-automatic weapon. The attack power was really a problem. After 5 bullets were fired, he had to change the magazine. When the other party heard Jiang Hai's gunshot, they also knew that this was an opportunity. As soon as the man gave the order, the person who was originally lying on the ground instantly jumped up and rushed towards Jiang Hai's side. Looking at these people rushing over, Luo Binci and others understood that the real difficult battle had just begun. On the other side, in the villa, the atmosphere was a bit strange. These people did invade Jiang Hai's home. There were a total of 6 people who invaded. These people parked their cars on the other side of Jiang Hai's manor. After the battle here began, they quietly sneaked in. They sneaked into Jiang Hai's villa and then blocked the women of Jiang Hai who were paying attention to the battle below. According to their original plan, after capturing these women, they would force Jiang Hai to negotiate. But they did not expect that the current situation was not as easy as they thought because it seemed that they had an internal strife. Knerson Peters, don't let me say it again. Come here immediately. Looking at the big man standing in front of this group of women, a man who was blind in one eye roared with a gloomy face. At this time, these 6 people were clearly divided into 2 groups. 5 people on one side were holding pistols in their hands, and opposite them was a 2-meter-tall big man with a gun in his hand, aiming at these people in front of him. Behind this big man were Delina, Marion, Aphrodite, Bernice, Lilia, and 9 other girls. This group of girls was scared at this time. They looked at the situation in front of them with an incredible face. They did not know what to do. Run. The big man looked at the people in front of him and said to the girls behind him without looking back. Fortunately, Delina and the others were not good people before. Although they were nervous at this time, they were still able to talk. They slowly moved to the door according to the big man's words. Seeing that these people were about to run, the one-eyed man's eyes flashed with a trace of sharpness. Open fire. Along with the one-eyed man's order, the 5 pistols instantly opened fire. However, this big guy actually managed to block the 5 pistols, causing his body to explode with blood. However, his blocking gave Deliana and the others the opportunity to escape from Jianghu's room. Seeing Deliana and the others running away, the one-eyed man couldn't help but gnash his teeth in anger. Chase. Bang. Just when the 5 of them were about to chase after them, the big man who was lying on the ground suddenly opened fire and directly shot one of them in the chest. Seeing that the big man was still alive, the one-eyed man's face couldn't help but turn green. The remaining 4 people instantly rushed to the side to avoid the bullets. You 3 go and deal with the women below, I will deal with him. Looking at the big guy struggling to get up again, the killing intent in the one-eyed man's eyes became more intense. He said to the 3 men beside him. Hearing his words, the 3 men didn't say anything and directly went out of the room. Just when the big guy was attracted by the 3 men, the one-eyed man had already stood up. Bang bang. 2 consecutive sounds were heard. 2 blood flowers respectively appeared on the right shoulder and right leg of the big man. The pistol in his right hand was also instantly knocked away. At the same time, the big man's body trembled and he half knelt on the ground. Knerson Peters, to be honest, I originally appreciated you very much. You are big, brave, and tough, but you actually betrayed us at this time. You are courting death. Looking at the big man's appearance, the one-eyed man walked over with a gloomy face. Although this big man didn't join them for a long time, everyone in the gang actually liked this guy very much. He didn't do too many bad things, wasn't greedy for money, and wasn't greedy for women. He was tough and wouldn't discount any mission. Such a person was indeed the best lackey in the eyes of the higher-ups. Unfortunately, this lackey had broken his teeth today. This is the home of my benefactor, I won't let you succeed. Clutching his bleeding wound, Knerson Peters' face was ghastly pale, but his eyes were still fixed on the one-eyed man, his eyes full of killing intent. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see it. Hearing the words of the big man, the one-eyed man came over and pointed the pistol directly at his head. His eyes were full of viciousness as he spoke. Knerson Peters sighed. If he had known that this was the home of his benefactor, he might have come earlier. If he had joined, perhaps the result would have been different. It seems that the favor of saving my life will have to be repaid in the next life. Thinking of this, Conrad closed his eyes. At this moment, bang. Chapter 411. Where are we going now? Outside? After escaping from the room, Bernice pulled Xiaoya and asked with a pale face. She really didn't expect that she would encounter such an unexpected disaster while living in Jianghu's place. Who could she find to reason with? No, there is also a war outside, Come with me. Hearing her words, Aphrodite, who was running in front, hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth. She felt that she was the only one in this room who can help. Where are we going? Hearing that Aphrodite wasn't going to go outside, although Bernice was a little surprised, she still ran with her. But this time, Aphrodite didn't answer her. After coming to the first floor, she ran straight to a warehouse. In the surprised eyes of Bernice and the others, a bright room appeared in their sight. In this room, there was a bathroom, a water system, and in addition, there was an iron cage with a woman inside. This woman was sitting on the bed reading a book at this time. Seeing their arrival, the woman was a little stunned. I was wondering why you didn't come to deliver food tonight, you guys. What's the situation? Looking at Aphrodite in front of her, the woman closed the book and said to Aphrodite with a smile on her face, but looking at their panicked appearance, she was a little puzzled. There's no way, this warehouse is too thick, she really can't hear the sound outside at all from inside. Someone invaded the manor. If they catch us, it will be very bad for Jianghu, so we need your help. Walking to the front of the iron cage, Aphrodite looked at the woman in front of her and said with a serious face. She is? Bernice gently pulled Delina's sleeve from behind and asked curiously. An agent, Jianghu picked her up a while ago. Hearing her words, Delina actually didn't know much about this woman's details. She just heard Jianghu talk about her from time to time. She remembered that Jianghu said that this woman is very dangerous. Is it really okay to ask her for help? She is locked here, doesn't it mean that she is very dangerous? She should have a hostile relationship with you. Hearing Delina's words, Bernice couldn't help but say anxiously. If they were friends, why would they be locked up? And from the looks of it, he had been locked up for quite some time. Sure, it depends on whether you believe me or not. As if she heard Bernice's words, the woman slowly stood up and said to Aphrodite. She then looked at Bernice provocatively. This woman was quite interesting. I believe you. Bernice hesitated for a moment, then took out a key and opened the door. As the door opened, the woman slowly walked out. Phew, the feeling of freedom. I don't really feel anything. The woman stretched lazily and smiled. Then, in an instant, she hit Aphrodite with her elbow. Her speed was so fast that Aphrodite couldn't react at all. Just as she was regretting it and feeling that she had invited a wolf into the house, the tip of the woman's elbow stopped at her forehead. I'm just teasing you. I'm very happy here. I have to thank you for taking care of me. Looking at Aphrodite's appearance, the woman chuckled, opened her elbow and turned it into a hand. After gently touching Aphrodite's head, she walked straight out of the warehouse. When she walked out of the warehouse, the three people just happened to catch up. Seeing her, the three people on this side opened fire. But unfortunately, this woman, Azalina Vicabrio, is not an ordinary person. Her reaction is much faster than these three people. She immediately shrank back and dodged their bullets. She casually picked up a few plates next to her and threw them aside after she finished eating. She began to count in her heart. 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds. Although she had only taken a quick glance, she had already memorized the model of the weapon used by these people. It was a Glock 18 without an additional magazine, which meant that it only had the most basic 17 rounds. Counting bullets is enough. She used to do this kind of work a lot in the past. When she counted to 13, she had already rushed out of the warehouse like a ghost. The three people on this side immediately turned their guns and began to attack her. However, Azalina is not an ordinary person. These days, she has been eating and living well in Jianghu's house. She is also nourished by food with spiritual energy, so her current physical condition is much better than when she fought with Jianghu. Not only did she instantly lower her head to dodge the first round of bullets, but before the second round of bullets came, she had already stepped on the opposite wall. Then, she flipped over and dodged the second round of attacks. Then, she pressed down and dodged the third round of attacks. At this moment, the sound of the firing pin hitting the air was heard. It just happened that there were no more bullets. Seeing this, the corners of Azalina's mouth couldn't help but twitch. The 3 plates in her hand instantly flew out. With 3 slapping sounds, the wrists of the 3 people were hit by Azalina. The huge force caused a sharp pain in the wrists of the 3 people. In an instant, they couldn't hold the guns in their hands and the pistols fell to the ground. At this time, Azalina also flashed and appeared in front of them. She stepped on the ground and jumped high. Then, she directly hit the side of the cheek of the person in the middle, sending him flying to the person on the left. Not only did he fall, but he also pulled the person on the left down. Seeing this scene, the person on the right was stunned for a moment, but he was still ready to fight. But just as he took a step forward, Azalina didn't stop in the air. Instead, she directly stepped on the wall on the other side and bounced back again. At the same time, a whip kick landed heavily on the person's face. In an instant, the person saw stars. He slammed into the wall and fell weakly. Now, only the last person who had just stood up was left. Azalina didn't say much. She turned around and flashed behind the person in an instant. She raised her hands and climbed directly onto the person's neck, not giving him any chance at all. She twisted her body like this. With a click, the person's neck was already tilted to the other side and his body went limp. Although it was lively now, in fact, the exchange of gunfire between the 4 people happened in a flash. From the time Azalina came out of the warehouse to the time the 3 people all fell, it took less than 5 seconds. Aphrodite and the others in the warehouse only heard a burst of noise before the outside quieted down. It's done. They're just some hooligans. After checking the situation of the 3 people again, 2 of them were already dead. The person who was hit first was still breathing, but a severe concussion was inevitable. After shouting at Aphrodite and the others inside, Azalina also took out the guns of the other people, at the same time found the magazines on their bodies and reloaded them. Are there any more enemies? After adjusting the gun to the best state, Azalina looked at Aphrodite and said with a serious face. Yes, there are more outside, and there are more upstairs. Aphrodite heard her words and said with a serious face. Don't move. Just as she finished speaking, there was a sound in Azalina's ears. In an instant, she pointed her gun at the stairs, and a long gun stretched out from the stairs. But when the 2 sides saw each other, they were stunned for a moment. Then the long gun in the distance was put away first, revealing Belle Lester's face. Bale and Azalina had met before. In fact, the reason she was sent here was because Bale was the one who sent her away. It's done. Belle looked at the 3 people lying next to Azalina and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Well, it's also done upstairs. Hearing his words, Azalina also put away her gun and asked with a serious face. Well, it's done, but there are still a lot of people outside. If it's convenient, I'll have to trouble you to take care of them. Seeing Aphrodite and the others coming out of the warehouse, Belle put away his gun. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to trust this woman for the time being. When this woman heard what Belle said, she also nodded, indicating that it doesn't matter. By the way, there is still a big guy upstairs. You are a doctor, right? Go and see him, he is with us. Seeing that Azalina had agreed, Belle was about to leave. But before he left, he suddenly remembered something and said to Bernice, who had just walked out with a frightened look on her face. Then, he quickly ran up to the 2nd floor. He wanted to go to the roof and continue attacking. Just now, when he just came down, he just happened to see the final confrontation between the one-eyed man and the big guy. He subconsciously opened fire and killed the one-eyed man who was holding the gun. As for the big guy, after telling him that he was going to save the other girls, he fainted. After all, he had been hit by more than 10 bullets. Although they didn't hit any vital parts, it was still hard to explain why he didn't faint. Oh. Ah. Hearing Belle's words, Bernice froze for a moment before reacting. Indeed, if it wasn't for the big guy just now, they would have died, so when she heard that the big guy was in trouble, she should also do her duty. So she immediately went upstairs and looked at the big guy who had lost too much blood and was in shock. Everyone was also busy. Fortunately, Jianghu cherished his life very much. In addition to not being able to perform surgery, he almost had all kinds of medicine, so temporarily stabilizing his condition was not a problem. As long as the people outside were repelled, they could use a helicopter to send him for treatment. And Azalina, at this time, also came to the 2nd floor. This was the first time she observed Jianghu's villa, and it was really good. As for Belle on the other side, he quickly climbed to the top of the bed. When he came up, the distance between the 2 sides was only about 30 meters. Jianghu and the others were now hiding behind the car, shooting with pistols and shotguns. And the other side seemed to be very confident in the people who attacked the villa. They only shot back and didn't attack forward. This was a good opportunity. Chapter 4:12. Setting up the gun, reloading, and aiming, Biyao's movements were done in one go. He had trained himself to be a killing machine in the Delta, and now he was able to use it freely. When he put the crosshairs with night vision goggles on those people, death came. Bang! A person who was attacking Jianghu's manor had a look of disbelief on his face as he looked at the bloody hole in his chest. His face was filled with confusion as he went limp. The person beside him was also filled with shock. They were shocked not because one of their companions died, but because the sniper came back. Just now, they clearly heard Jianghu ask the sniper to deal with the enemies in the villa. Now that the sniper came back, and the people in the villa were silent, there was no need to say more. The people in the villa were finished. Without backup, they were finished. Thinking of this, these people suddenly felt a chill down their spine. They looked at each other and saw a trace of fear in each other's eyes. Run. No one knew who said it first, but many people gave up the idea of continuing to fight at this time. They were really ready to run, but could they run? With the sound of the sniper rifle again, another person fell in a pool of blood, and this gunshot was like a starting gun, making the others rush in all directions in an instant. These people may be third-rate in fighting, but when it came to running, they were all experts. They knew that now they couldn't run in a straight line, they had to run separately. Maybe 2 of them could escape. The 11 people who were still alive scattered in an instant, running in 11 directions. But just as they ran out of the bunker, the shotguns began to play their role. There was almost no need to aim with the shotguns, they just needed to look at the approximate position and shoot. Among the 11 people, 5 of them were shot to the ground by these shotguns. There were 6 people who escaped quickly, but they were also targeted by Jianghu and Biyao. Under the heavy fire of the sniper rifle and machine gun, Jianghu wiped out 3 people at once, and Biyao also killed 1. Only 2 of the 6 people escaped into the grass in the distance, but Jianghu was not worried, because there were still their reinforcements there. Sure enough, with a dog's bark, 2 people's screams sounded in the grass. At this point, all the people who attacked Jianghu's manor were killed. Looking at the outer wall of his villa, which was full of bullet holes, and his car, Jianghu's heart was bleeding. Needless to say, his loss this time was not small, and the most important thing was that he probably had to pay for these losses. These people certainly didn't have the money to pay, and the insurance company couldn't pay for Jianghu's injuries. It was precisely because of this that Jianghu estimated that this time, he would have to pay a lot of money, but compared to the losses he would suffer if he didn't resist, and the importance of the people in his manor, these were not a problem. Phew, let's talk about the inventory tomorrow. We need to deal with the guys outside now. With a long sigh, Jianghu patted Moses Adams, who was not far from him. Although Moses Adams was a man who couldn't carry anything, he was still a man after all. So Jianghu originally asked him to hide in the villa. As a result, he deliberately came outside and found a small pistol to fight with him. Although he didn't kill anyone and shot a dozen bullets there, Jianghu still appreciated such a person who was willing to go through thick and thin with him. I won't go. Feeling his weak body, Moses Adams said with a wry smile. Just stay here and be obedient. Looking at him, Jianghu smiled and said hello to Belle upstairs. After the 2 came down, they started the only car that could still move, Jianghu's car, and rushed to the airport. After arriving at the airport, Jianghu and Belle got on Marin Rupert's helicopter, took off, and headed outside the manor. On the helicopter, Jianghu had already set up a fixed machine gun rack. To be honest, after firing nearly 500 bullets, even if Jianghu's physical fitness was really strong, some of his muscles were now trembling. The recoil of this thing was too strong. It was so strong that Jianghu felt like he couldn't withstand it. As the helicopter flew out of the manor, the police, and the bad guys outside were all dumbfounded, especially the bad guys. When Jianghu opened the door of the helicopter and revealed the M134, Doyle George, who was hiding behind the police car at this time, couldn't help but laugh. He knew that they would win even without backup. Tut 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 tut. In an instant, the 7.62mm bullets became an eternal sound in this space. The people below didn't expect to be attacked from the sky at all. Even if these people hid in the car, it was useless. The defense on the side of the car couldn't withstand the M134's strafing, let alone the alloy on the roof. As the bullets continued to pour down, these people who originally agreed to fake the fight were completely dumbfounded. They watched as their companions were shot into sieves by the bullets from the helicopter in front of them. Many people wanted to run at this time. But could they run? Don't forget, there was still Belle. As long as these people sat in the driver's seat, Belle would reward the person in the driver's seat with a bullet. As blood flowed, screams sounded one after another in front of Jianghu's manor. The Americans were never stubborn people. In the past, when they were fighting, there were people who surrendered in groups. Now, it was the same. Seeing that they couldn't win, many people took the initiative to kneel on the ground, put their hands on their heads, and surrendered. Although Jianghu really wanted to kill these people, Belle, who was behind him, pulled him back. The law of the United States clearly stated that when the other person didn't threaten or have the will to fight, as long as they killed someone, even if it was in self-defense, it was still murder. There were many police officers here. These people wouldn't say anything, but it didn't mean that these police officers were on the same side as Jianghu. Therefore, they would do what they should do, and they couldn't do what they shouldn't do. Of course, after these people went in, whether they could come out alive depended on Jianghu's mood. Seeing that the battle was over, Jianghu breathed a sigh of relief and returned to his manor by plane. When he returned to the manor, the police in Winthrop had already broken through the roadblocks and arrested most of the people blocking the road. The remaining police cars were sent to the manor. With the addition of these police cars, all the people who had surrendered were taken away. Then the police began to clean up the manor. A total of 46 people invaded Jianghu's manor. Of these 46 people, 41 were dead. There were still 5 people alive, including the one who let Delina and the others go. When Jianghu saw this big guy, he remembered that this guy should be the big guy he met in Miami. He had even invited him to eat hamburgers before, but he didn't know why this big guy would come here. However, he also listened to Delina's words. If it wasn't for this big guy, they would have been done for. Although Jianghu hated these people who invaded his manor, he was not a person who would bite the hand that fed him. This person helped him, so Jianghu sent him to the hospital in Boston in his helicopter. Of course, the Boston police also went with him. As for the other 4 people who were still alive, they were not treated so well. After the ambulance arrived, their wounds were simply treated and they were directly taken back to the Winthrop police station. They had no human rights or freedom here. If they didn't die immediately after breaking into someone's house with a gun, then they could only wait and see. There should be a priority for everything. Winthrop and Jianghu's manor had just been solved. There was also news from Boston. The Boston police immediately dispatched and sealed off the area where Billy Wallen was. They must not let this guy escape. Once there was evidence, they would immediately arrest him. This was inevitable. Jianghu's house was temporarily uninhabitable. After arranging for everyone to stay in the small villa where Aphrodite and the others lived for a night, Jianghu also took Moses Adams to the Winthrop police station. Of course, Jianghu did not lock up Azalina, who had made a great contribution this time. Instead, he let her go with Aphrodite and the others. Jianghu did not have any restrictions on her. If she wanted to leave now, she could leave. Originally, Jianghu was in a dilemma whether to lock her up at home or not. Now that she saved Delina and the others' lives, Jianghu did not need to be in a dilemma. He would just give her back her freedom. However, Azalina did not seem to want to leave. They stayed in the police station for a night. Of course, Jiang Hai's treatment was naturally different from those people. After Jiang Hai made a simple statement, he was assigned to an office and slept there. Although he only slept on the sofa, he was obviously the most comfortable in the entire police station. Even Moses Adams, who came with him, only slept for 3 hours. He had a lot of things to do. Although he did not help much during the battle, he also proved his position. Therefore, Jiang Hai handed over all the work to him, including counting the losses, monitoring the interrogation records, and finding the details of these people. In Boston, since Jiang Hai could not solve it with money, he could only find a way to solve it himself. If people did not offend him, he basically would not offend them. But if people offended him, then he would kill their whole family. Don't say that the children were innocent, the women were innocent, and their parents were innocent. In Jiang Hai's view, it was normal for his whole family to be buried with him when he committed a crime, especially when it was him who was the one who offended him. Although he was mentally prepared, when Moses Adams sent the information the next day, he could not help but frown. Chapter 413. The exterior walls of the villa need to be cleaned up, the parking lot needs to be cleaned up, the lawn needs to be cleaned up, and all the cars need to be repaired. 6 of them are scrapped, Philemon Turner's cars. The windows in the house are broken, the lawn is seriously polluted, and a lot of the barbed wire on the exterior walls have been knocked down. Everything in the rooms has been destroyed. Jiang Hai couldn't help but slap his forehead. Last night, he had to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in compensation. No, if the villa was renovated, it might cost millions of dollars. This was pure compensation, and the insurance company wouldn't pay for it. Generally speaking, the insurance company would only pay for the villa if it caught fire, was stolen, or exploded. Even if a meteorite fell from the sky and smashed the villa, the insurance company would still pay for it, because it was a natural disaster. But the insurance company wouldn't pay for the villa that was attacked and beaten up like this, because Jiang Hai had caught the people who attacked his manor. Logically speaking, these people should pay for it. But it was obvious that these people would pay for it. After all, after they went in, Jiang Hai wouldn't let them come out alive. Besides, they didn't have the money to pay for it. Jiang Hai couldn't do anything about it except scold them. Of course, he probably wouldn't be insured again next year, because of these fraudulent foreign insurance companies. The only money that could be paid for was the repair of Jiang Hai's cars, because the cars had gun insurance. There was nothing else. Jiang Hai had to pay for it himself. Also, they had fought together last night. Jiang Hai was very touched. He gave each of them $200,000, which had been given before the battle. It could be considered a settlement allowance. If anything happened, he would naturally give them more money. But now that nobody was hurt, Jiang Hai could save the rest of the money. Jiang Hai didn't care about the money. He could earn millions of dollars back by killing dozens of cows. But he was really angry. Why did he have to suffer such an unexpected disaster? Millions of dollars were nothing to him. These guys attacked his manor. Who did he offend? Have you investigated these guys? I'm going to kill them all. Sitting on the sofa in the police station, Jiang Hai said to Moses Adams. Listening to Jiang Hai's words and looking at his sharp eyes, Moses Adams shrugged. Needless to say, there are many people who want to kill them all, but unfortunately, this guy is very careful. This time, other than the core members and desperados, no one received his call personally. All the gangsters who were caught were interrogated by the Winthrop and Boston police. They all came with the core members, and most of these core members died in your hands. Only 4 survived, and they are the only people who might know the situation, but these 4 people didn't say anything. Moses Adams hesitated for a moment as he looked at Jiang Hai. The current situation is indeed a little troublesome. After all, in this world, there was law everywhere. Now that someone was prepared to fight to the death, the police couldn't do anything about it. Give me their information, I'll take a look. But this didn't apply to Jiang Hai. He didn't play by the rules. If the other party didn't play by the rules, he wouldn't play by the rules. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams immediately found the information of the 4 people and handed it to Jiang Hai. With the information of the 4 people, Jiang Hai pushed open the door and walked out. Last night, the Winthrop police station was very impressive. Especially Doyle George and the others, who were on the front line and didn't take a step back. As a result, 3 police officers were injured. Fortunately, no one died, which was a great fortune amidst the misfortune. So after taking the statements last night, Jiang Hai donated $3 million to the police station. He donated $50,000 to each of the 3 injured police officers. Of course, it wasn't through the accounts, which meant that the $50,000 could be directly stuffed into their pockets without paying taxes. It was because of the $3,150,000 that everyone in the police station now looked at Jiang Hai more warmly than they did at Murray Smith. Many people were wondering why they weren't the ones who were injured back then. $50,000. Only a middle-class family in the United States could earn $50,000. Although the police's salary wasn't low, it wasn't high either. They got more than a year's salary for no reason, and they didn't have to pay taxes. Just thinking about it made them very happy. Faced with this god of wealth, Jiang Hai, they were now truly loyal. When they saw Jiang Hai come out, they all looked at Jiang Hai kindly and nodded with smiles. After Jiang Hai nodded back at them, he walked into the interrogation room. At that moment it was already the 3rd wave of police officers interrogating these people in the interrogation room. Because all the peaceful countries in the world were basically the same, the interrogation had to be videotaped, so there was no way to beat people up or torture them to get a confession. The only way was to bombard them with fatigue, not letting them sleep at all, and then keep asking simple questions. If they didn't answer, they could wake them up with water, but they wouldn't let them sleep. These people were all felons with evidence. Firstly, they definitely wouldn't be allowed to be released on bail. Secondly, there was no humane law. They could be locked up here for 15 days. If you had the ability, you could go without sleep for 15 days. People definitely couldn't take it. However, Jiang Hai couldn't stand waiting here for 15 days. Therefore, after he greeted Murray Smith, who was watching over here, he walked into one of the interrogation rooms. When the police officer in the interrogation room saw Jiang Hai, he stood up. Although he was still very respectful to Jiang Hai, there was some surprise in his eyes. This was because he thought that Jiang Hai was here to beat people up. If that was the case, it would be difficult for them. If a criminal died in the police station, regardless of whether the criminal had committed a heinous crime, it would definitely cause a storm in the United States, where human life was more important than the sky. Therefore, he was really afraid that Jiang Hai would make a move. However, Jiang Hai wasn't a brainless person. He knew that he couldn't make a move in the police station. Even if he had a close relationship with the police station, he couldn't. Therefore, from the beginning, he didn't plan to make a move. Standing in front of the table, Jiang Hai glanced at the man in front of him. This man was one of the 46 people who attacked Jiang Hai's house yesterday. He was also the one with the least injury. This man was hit by Azalina Vicabrio and knocked into his companion. He had a severe concussion, but it wasn't fatal. Other than that, there were almost no internal injuries on his body. A concussion was actually a very disgusting injury. If it was mild, it would be nausea and confusion, just like cervical spondylosis. If it was severe, in addition to nausea and confusion, there would also be severe head pain. However, this guy was also a tough guy. He endured the headache and sat there for so long. Although his face was pale, he didn't say a word. Glancing at the 2 policemen, Jiang Hai motioned for them to leave first. After hesitating for a while, the 2 also left. After they left, Jiang Hai sat in front of the man. Moses Adams cleverly came to the front of the camera. Although the picture was still on, he pressed the microphone. The recording continued, but no sound could be heard. "Your name is Camilla March?" Looking at the information in his hand, Jiang Hai said calmly. However, when the other party heard Jiang Hai's words, He didn't answer him. He was still sitting there indifferently, motionless, not speaking. "Oh, you don't have to answer. I just came over to talk to you. You attacked my house, and you know that I'm very rich. So, 15 days later, no matter what sentence you will be sentenced to, it will be better if it's the death penalty, but if you go to prison, you will die a much more painful death. Of course, I know that you should be prepared for this. But according to my information, you also have a mother, 2 sons, and a daughter." TSK. What do you mean? Hearing Jiang Hai's threat, the man named Camilla March didn't waver. He knew that he couldn't escape death. A guy like Jiang Hai is obviously not a good person. He will certainly not let them go. But when Jiang Hai talked about his family, the man panicked. "You attacked my manor and attacked my family. So, I'm going to kill your whole family." Looking at Camilla March in front of him, Jiang Hai said indifferently, as if he was just saying that he drank a glass of milk this morning. "You can't do this, they are innocent." Hearing that Jiang Hai is really going to kill his whole family, Camilla March instantly slammed his hands on the table and said with a horrified face. Although Americans have a very weak concept of family, people like him can't keep their wives. They are constantly changing, but their blood-related family is their spiritual support. Now, Jiang Hai casually said that he will kill his family. He knows that Jiang Hai is not threatening him, nor is he joking. He will really do it. The law of the United States can't judge a demon like him. Innocent? Don't say this word in front of me. When you attacked me, wasn't I innocent? Weren't the people in my manor innocent? I can only say that you are in a hurry. Attacking me, I will kill your whole family. It's very fair. Clasping his hands, Jiang Hai said very indifferently. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the man couldn't help but be speechless because he really didn't know what to say. "Ask me, I'll tell you what I want to know. Please, let them go." He knows that if he wants his family to survive now, his life alone is not enough. He must say something. "No, I'm not a police officer. I know your boss is Billy Wallen. I'll find him personally and kill his entire family. I'm here to tell you that I'll kill your entire family too. That's all." Gently knocking on the table, Jiang Hai said very indifferently, then he stood up and shook his head at Moses Adams. The two walked out of the interrogation room. Chapter 4:14. "No, you can't do this. I'll tell you whatever you want to ask, please, please. They are innocent, please, please come back, I'll tell you whatever you want to ask, please don't do anything to them. Police, police, come and ask me, I'll tell you everything, please protect my family, please." Looking at Jiang Hai's firm and determined steps, the man named Camilla March struggled to stand up and stop Jiang Hai, but unfortunately, his hands and feet were handcuffed to the fixed chair, and it was difficult to move, let alone stand up. Although his hands and feet were bruised, he continued to shout as if he felt nothing. Seeing that his request could not move Jiang Hai's heart of stone, he called the police. For him, the only person he could trust now was the police, his former biggest enemy. "Jiang, your trick is really useful," Moses Adams said with a chuckle as he closed the door of the interrogation room again. "The wicked will be punished by the wicked." Jiang Hai's, "I'll kill your whole family," was really a heavy blow, and it was really useful. "You think I'm joking?" "No, I'm serious." But listening to Moses Adams's words, Jiang Hai laughed at himself. He would not joke about such things. Then he walked into the other 3 interrogation rooms. Except for one stubborn person who still did not say a word, the other 2 people were at a loss, shouting for Jiang Hai to let them go, but unfortunately, Jiang Hai was really going to kill their whole families. The people outside who accompanied the attack and blocked the road all deserved to die, but Jiang Hai had no way to kill their whole families. And Jiang Hai would not let these people go, because he also wanted to show his existence, he was not to be trifled with. But how to deal with these people? Jiang Hai had some problems. With so many people, it was impossible for him to deal with them one by one. It was too troublesome, and he could not fly to Miami and spend money to find some people to come back to Boston to do these things. Not to mention whether it would make a big deal out of it, just going back and forth was very troublesome, so Jianghu was also a little hesitant. After coming out of the 4 interrogation rooms, the police took over their work again. This time, their work efficiency was really fast. Soon, they found out the specific situation. Their boss was Billy Wallen, and it was also Billy who ordered the attack on Jianghu. In addition, Billy Wallen was also involved in gambling, flour, and other businesses. In order to protect their families, these people told him everything, which made the police very happy. Then, the police in Winthrop called the police in Boston. After the police in Boston received the news, they went out to arrest Billy Wallen, but the guy had already escaped. Then, they sealed all his property and warehouses, and some of his shops, and seized a lot of flour and other things. Of course, these had nothing to do with Jianghu. He was still thinking about how to kill these people's whole families. After Jianghu finished his work at the police station, he took a taxi and returned to the manor with Moses Adams. After returning to the manor, Moses Adams went to help Jianghu solve some trivial matters. For example, the renovation of the manor, the maintenance of the vehicles, and so on. Jianghu returned to his villa, sat on the sofa in the empty living room, and sorted out his thoughts. Now, his villa was empty because of last night. Daliana and Marion lived in Aphrodite's room, and Bernice and Lilia lived in Hilda Leonard and Peggy Hall's small villa. Of course, this was only temporary. When the villa was repaired, they would come back to live there. But these days, Jianghu still has no place to stay. Last night, he stayed in the police station, and he didn't know where to stay tonight. Although Jianghu's villa, except for the outer wall and his own room, was seriously damaged, other places were fine. Especially the guest rooms, the damage could be said to be almost zero. But now, this villa was the crime scene of the police. Even if they didn't feel guilty, the guest rooms were not allowed to stay, so this was also a problem. Headache, what should I do? Rubbing his temples, Jianghu seemed to have not felt like this for a long time. Since he came here, his life has been very leisurely. Every day, in addition to eating, playing, or sleeping. Except for the fact that he didn't have a fixed girlfriend, he felt that his life was as beautiful as living in a dream. Now that he suddenly had so many things to do, he really felt that he couldn't handle it well. Not to mention the problem of sleeping, just the matter of revenge gave him a headache. If he didn't take revenge, the anger in Jianghu's heart would not be extinguished. But if he wanted to take revenge, how could he do it? Do it himself? What if he failed miserably? But if he spent money to find someone, there was no reliable person in Boston. Thinking of this, Jianghu really had a headache. Even if he wanted to trouble Belle, Jianghu couldn't say it. After all, the people he wanted to kill were not only Billy Wallen, but also the old, the weak, the women, and the children. Belle Lester was a soldier, and he had a strong sense of justice. He definitely wouldn't do it. Jianghu didn't have to try. If he tried, it would be easy to distract him. Other than that, he had no other choice. What's wrong? Are you thinking about something? Just when Jianghu felt a little numb, a voice suddenly came from behind. This startled Jianghu. He immediately looked back and saw Azalina Vicabrio standing behind him. It's you. You haven't left yet? Thank you so much for last night. Seeing that it was her, Jianghu's body relaxed again. He continued to lean on the sofa, talking intermittently. You don't have to thank me. I was just saving myself. Besides, if I leave, it seems that I have nowhere to go. Hearing Jianghu's words, Azalina moved her long legs, slowly walked to the sofa next to Jianghu, and then sat down. The world is big, there will always be a place for you. Jianghu also knew some of her situation. Now, what else could he say? He could only comfort her. But then again, with her skills, it wouldn't be a problem for her to make a living anywhere. But I don't like to go out. Otherwise, what do you think of me? Shaking her head, Azalina suddenly looked at Jiang Hai and said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was still a little confused. What does she mean? I know that you have been very troubled recently, and you also need a timely combat force. What do you think of me? It's not that I want to say this, but although I can't beat you in a fight, when it comes to close combat, your special forces subordinate is no match for me either. Looking at Jiang Hai, Azalina suddenly said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was confused. What is going on? In fact, people are very afraid of the unknown, and Azalina is the same. People live according to their habits. If it weren't for the fact that she would die if she didn't escape, she would probably still be in the original organization now. After escaping here, she stayed with Jiang Hai. To be honest, although she was locked in the warehouse, she felt very good. Here, there were no endless missions, no bloodthirsty lives, and no threats that could take your life at any time. There was also no need to scheme against others. There was good food, good drink, and a leisurely life, even though it didn't last long. But it had already made her a little fascinated. Now, if she went out to find a job, it would be better to stay with Jiang Hai. It was safe and leisurely, and most importantly, she believed that Jiang Hai must have a lot of things that he wanted her to help with. When I was 6 years old, I entered the KGB and began to learn fighting skills and firearms skills. When I was 12 years old, I completed my first mission independently. When I was 14, I began to learn the ability of spy missions. I know a lot of tricks to please men. Although I haven't used them in actual combat, if you are willing to let me stay, these things are all yours. Seeing the look of desire in Jiang Hai's eyes, Azalina smiled and took the initiative to come closer. However, as soon as she came closer, Jiang Hai was startled, and his body involuntarily shrank back. What are you afraid of? It's not like you can't beat me. Seeing Jiang Hai's appearance, Azalina chuckled, and then her whole body took the initiative to come closer. She had been educated differently from ordinary people since she was a child. In her world, her body was a weapon, her body was a tool, her body was a prop, her body was a media to complete the task, that's all. Now that she gave it to Jiang Hai, she didn't care, but Jiang Hai couldn't stand it. Although he could casually find some girls to play with outside, if Azalina really stayed, she would be one of his people. Although he was not born in the year of the rabbit, he had the nerves of a rabbit. First, he was timid, and second, he didn't eat the grass around him. Cough, forget it. If you want to stay, then stay. There's no need to try. Sure enough, at the critical moment, Jiang Hai was scared again, and he coughed and said. In fact, he was right to think so. Azalina's strength was indeed strong, and he also needed a bodyguard now. A beautiful female bodyguard with a good figure by his side was also a very honorable thing for him. In that case, thank you, boss. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina also narrowed her eyes and smiled. She suddenly realized that this man who had defeated her seemed to be quite interesting. Originally, she thought that a man like Jiang Hai had no weaknesses, but now it seemed that the weakness was very obvious. You will be free in the future, but when I have to go out for something, you can follow me. You can arrange your time yourself. I will help you solve the problem of your identity. The weekly salary will be set at $2,000, and the year-end bonus will be calculated separately. Jiang Hai also looked for a bodyguard before, so he still had some understanding of the salary of a bodyguard. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.